Chapter 114. Royalty's show started at 8 p.m., but Tongning arrived backstage at 5 p.m. Although the battlefield this time was not overseas, Royalty was already one of the top brands in the country. At first, Tongning did not expect Lan Shi to give her such a big gift. But, after thinking about it, Lan Shi was after all a businesswoman, so everything she did was based on her own interests. In reality, there were 15 models scheduled to take part in the show tonight. Tongning was the oldest. 26 years old, in the eyes of the average person, was still young. But, in the modeling industry, in a few more years, Tongning would not even have the right to appear here. Above all, Royalty was a big brand, so the models participating this time all had a big background. According to Tongning's current status, although she wasn't low, she wouldn't stand out amongst the 15 models. So, the show director was full of doubt towards her for the opening show. It seemed, every time Tongning worked with a model, there would always be times when they didn't trust her. Let alone tonight, amongst the models, there were even award-winning models. Tongning, if you have stage fright or are not in the right state, let me know immediately and I will arrange for a replacement, the show director said to Tongning, who was getting dressed. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a good relationship with Lan Shi, he would not have considered Tongning. Although she was very popular recently, there were many models that were better than her. Hey show director, Tongning has been in the industry for 8 to 9 years, you don't need to worry about stage fright, Long Jie reminded with a smile. I'm just worried you won't have enough confidence. Hearing this, Tongning gently lifted her chin. This action was undoubtedly a sign of confidence. The show director did not say anything else. He was waiting to see how Tongning could present him with a level of professionalism that could satisfy him. Why would Lan Shi take a liking to a cold and aloof woman who was already so old? The other models looked at Tongning like they were watching a good show. Some of them even leaned close to each other and whispered, "We all went through the auditions and worked hard to get in. Who would have thought, someone with a background is so different?" She directly landed the opening show. I heard even A-grade models like Qin Lu had to go through an audition to get a chance to appear in this show. What is this Tongning? You're not convinced? Why don't you compete with her on background? You're already so old, you should be at home taking care of your children. Why are you here? Aren't you afraid of spraining your waist? As soon as Long Jie heard the discussions getting louder, she turned and glared at the people in front of her. Tongning tugged on her arm, reminding her to control her emotions. Why would you lower yourself to their level? Wouldn't you become like them? Besides, they're not wrong. Even if you can refute them now, it's just verbal. They won't be convinced. Long Jie scoffed but did not say a word. At this time, Yongjing led a group of young women backstage. As soon as she saw Tongning, she was quite surprised. She had no idea that Lan Shi had planned this for her. As the two's eyes met, complex emotions filled their eyes. However, Yongjing did not say a word. She simply led the girls over to the show director and introduced them to him. This man had a good relationship with Lan Shi. As soon as he heard Yongjing had brought people to watch, he allowed them to do as they pleased, as long as they didn't disturb the models. Tongning, it's time to get changed, we need to coordinate our movements. Tongning stood up from the makeup mirror and brushed past Yongjing. At this time, Yongjing turned to Tongning and said, "Miss Tang, I'm sorry I rejected your resume. I'm sure you know how much pressure the modeling industry has. Not to mention, you are already 26 years old." Tongning gave a half smile, without a hint of emotion. "It's fine, I know you have your own difficulties. Don't you feel tired carrying it like this? Tongning, you're actually quite a hypocrite. Do you dare say you're not angry?" Yongjing crossed her arms, her words were direct and insulting. "That's because anger can't change the fact that you are a despicable person. Why should I waste my energy?" After speaking, Tongning turned to leave, but Yongjing grabbed onto her arm. "You better not have any other ideas about joining Cheng Tian, it's impossible. Does President Lan know that you are in charge of Cheng Tian now?" Tongning smiled as she freed herself from Yongjing's grip. Yongjing froze for a moment as she felt a chill down her spine. Tongning's words had directly pierced through Yongjing's heart. She was currently testing Lan Shi's bottom line. One of the models that followed Yongjing into the backstage was actually quite fond of Tangning's style. Naturally, she was excited to see her idol. However, just as she reached out her hand to greet Tangning, Yongjing sneered, "You are a model signed by Cheng Tian. Why are you shaking hands with a model that isn't worth anything? Are you trying to lower yourself?" Yongjing's voice, because she did it on purpose, it was loud and piercing to the ears. Everyone nearby heard it. Cheng Tian Entertainment's manager, Y, was humiliating Tangning backstage at Royalty's show. The young girl weakly withdrew her hand. Tangning simply smiled and patted her on the shoulder, indicating it was fine. Everyone was in the mood to watch a good show. They loved to see people that came out of nowhere get torn apart by the crowd. However, after Tangning finished changing and returned to being a model, her aura and her nobility was something no one present could compare to. Even the show director that was previously unhappy with Tangning looked at her and thought back to the naive woman from a moment ago. His eyes lit up in awe. Royalty's main focus for this week was ink, so Tangning was wearing a slanted black and white chiffon dress. The irregular black and white print wrapped around her perfect body, and because of the black and white color, her sleeves were stretched out even longer. Tangning's ability to perform was publicly acknowledged. However, most people had only seen it on television or in print advertisements. So, seeing it in person, they still felt it was unbelievably beautiful. Her figure was perfect. Her expression was even more perfect. She had always been able to blend in with any clothes. They complemented each other and never stole the other's beauty. Looking at everyone's awe, Tangning simply said calmly, "I am 26 years old, I'm not as energetic as you guys, so, let's meet on the runway." The models that were whispering to each other immediately looked down at the dresses they were wearing. They were obviously from the same line, yet Tangning looked like a big brand, while they looked like cheap goods. As for Tangning's words, they were quite skillful. In other words, they were young, but the clothes they wore made them look like they were 36 years old. The difference in appeal was more than 10 levels. Inside the studio, Mo Ting was already waiting patiently. Hearing Long Jie complain about what happened backstage, he couldn't help but furrow his brows. This Yongjing, he needed to teach her a lesson. Chapter 115. Yongjing was completely unaware of the danger she was in. She had no idea that Tangning had a wife-protecting demon backing her up. In actual fact, she felt Tangning could empathize with her. She felt the methods and tricks Tangning had used to climb to the top were no less than hers. So, she had a sense of disdain towards Tangning. Just like how she often disliked herself, she thought Tangning was simply too shrewd and had too many tricks up her sleeves. So, she did not feel it was a pity to lose Tangning. Royalty's show was about to start. Many of the models were still in the middle of making adjustments because their clothes and makeup didn't suit them. As Tangning was only going to walk the opening show, she only had one set of clothes. Unlike the other models, she had to wait for the rest of the show. Yongjing guided the newbies through their lessons. However, every now and then, she would look at Tangning with one thought. No matter how good you are, no matter how professional you are, even if my people insist on learning from you, you still won't be able to enter Cheng Tian. You still won't be able to access the best resources. You will still be an old model that doesn't move up or down, doesn't move forward, isn't B, isn't A. Tangning, why does Yongjing refuse to let you go? Is it because you snatched her opening show in France? I was wondering why she was so annoying. Long Jie wanted to poke Yongjing's arrogant eyes blind. Where does she get the confidence to suppress you? Wait until the day you sign with Cheng Tian, let's see if she can still be so arrogant. Since you already know that will be your chance to step on her, why are you so angry? Let her be. Tangning didn't mind. Although Yongjing's level was indeed high, she was too full of herself. People like her would easily expose their weaknesses. Mph, Long Jie humphed as she withdrew her gaze and praised Tangning, "You look beautiful tonight." In reality, Tangning was indeed full of energy. But don't forget, there was still the A-grade model, Qin Lu. She only arrived on the eve of the show with her award-winning uncle. As soon as the show director saw them, he immediately ran over and said in a respectful tone, "Yunji, I never expected to see you here today. I apologize for my rudeness." "You're welcome." I came here today specifically for my niece. With Lulu's status, how could she not be the one to perform the opening show? Perhaps, Qin Lu had heard about Tongning's sudden appearance, so she brought someone to back her up. Of course, with Qin Lu's status, it was understandable that she would do something like this. The show director glanced at Tongning awkwardly. Aren't you being unfair? Big brother Yoon, how can you say that? Isn't our Lulu going to close the stage? That's the finale. I'm going to start the show. Qin Lu pestered her uncle and acted like a spoiled child. She hated the models that appeared out of nowhere. Then, should I go make some adjustments? The show director asked for their opinion. Whether it's the opening or closing, I don't want to see any models appearing out of nowhere. This is our bottom line. The other party's intentions were clear, they didn't want Tongning to go on stage. Everyone looked at Tongning with schadenfreude. Wasn't she so arrogant just a moment ago? What was the result? Now, he didn't even have the chance to go on stage. Amongst them, the happiest was Yongjing. She crossed her arms and let out a HMPH. Tongning, did you think you could survive in the industry without any background? The show director was helpless. He had no idea that Tongning was already a signed model with Cheng Tian. He thought she was pushing Tongning out of friendship. But, if he could explain things to Shi, then he was more willing to offend her. After all, Tongning wasn't a big shot, he didn't need to care too much about her. So, after careful consideration, he walked over to Tongning and said, Tongning, actually, I was only doing this to help a friend. I can only ask for your forgiveness. Is it fun to tease people like this? Long Jie was so angry she was about to spit fire as she stood in front of Tongning and questioned. The show director felt a little guilty and prepared himself for Tongning to lose her temper. But Tongning remained calm, she wasn't affected in the slightest. She simply held on to Long Jie, reminding her not to act rashly as she replied in a gentle voice, I'm already here and sitting here. My makeup is already on and I'm just waiting to go on stage. If I leave, you will need to find another model. That would be troublesome. I won't be doing the opening and closing, is that okay? The show director was a little surprised. His heart was filled with gratitude. At this moment, he almost knelt down in admiration of Tongning's righteousness. Okay, Tongning, thank you so much. No one expected, Tongning was actually willing to let go of the opening. After being humiliated like that, how could she sit there without batting an eyelid and continue to do her makeup? In reality, while Tongning was speaking, Long Jie had already stepped outside to take a phone call. Of course, she was going to report Big Boss. As soon as Mo Ting found out what was happening backstage, he immediately explained to Lu Che in a low voice. Qin Lu and her uncle were happily enjoying the attention of the crowd. All the models were happy that Qin Lu had snatched the opening from Tongning. Needless to say, Yang Jing's smile was almost at the same level as her nose. At this time, a handsome figure suddenly entered the backstage. Everyone turned to look at Lu Che. A lot of people didn't recognize him, but the so-called big shot actor definitely recognized him. He immediately stood up from his seat and walked over to Lu Che to greet him. Assistant Lu, long time no see. Lu Che glanced at the man and nodded his head in acknowledgement. He couldn't be bothered to say a word as he looked around for Tongning. Finally, he spotted Tongning and immediately walked over to her side. He bowed respectfully. Miss Tang, the president knows you are nearby, so he wanted to ask if you are free to have dinner with him tonight. Although the big shot actor couldn't hear what Lu Che said to Tongning, he could tell for Lu Che to be so obedient, Tongning was definitely not an ordinary person. There was even a possibility that the CEO of Hai Rui, Mo Ting, was involved. Of course, Tongning knew Lu Che was doing this on purpose. He was sent by Mo Ting to help her out. So, she did not hesitate as she smiled at Lu Che. Help me thank your president, it would be my honor. Lu Che did not say much as he smiled and turned to leave. At this time, a trembling voice could be heard from the backstage. That man, he couldn't be the CEO's assistant from Hai Rui Entertainment, right? Then, Tongning. Chapter 116. Seeing Tongning still so calm, the actor couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine as a chill ran down his spine. If he found out that Tongning had a personal relationship with Hai Rui, he would never have dared to challenge her. After all, the consequence of offending Mo Ting was being denied a lead role for the rest of his life. He didn't want to take this risk. The actor broke out in a cold sweat. After careful consideration, he finally let go of his niece's hand and walked over to Tongning. He then scratched his head awkwardly. Miss Tang, I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't know you were friends with President Mo from Hai Rui. Everyone thought they were seeing things. Maybe their ears were hallucinating. The actor, who was so aggressive just a moment ago, was now bowing down and apologizing to Tongning. Was he apologizing? Yongjing was even angrier. She never expected Tongning to have such a relationship. Of course, she didn't think Tongning and Mo Ting had a deep relationship. Because for someone like Tongning, if she had a good relationship with Mo Ting, how could she not create hype? They were probably just acquaintances and Lu Che's appearance was just a coincidence. Of course, Yang Jing's analysis wasn't unreasonable. But, sooner or later, she would have to pay for her assumptions. Uncle, why are you apologizing to her? Qin Lu wasn't happy. Tongning was merely a model that came out of nowhere. What was there to be proud of? Lulu, you are still young, you still have a lot of opportunities. Let's give this opportunity back to Miss Tang. Hearing this, Tongning couldn't help but laugh. What happened to his bottom line? Didn't he say he couldn't tolerate people coming out of nowhere? No need, I did come out of nowhere, but I didn't know that all of you had already passed an interview. I simply agreed to help a friend, Tongning rejected politely. What right do you have to do whatever you say? What right do you have to take whatever you want and give whatever you want? Tongning ignored the man's politeness. She wanted to leave them hanging and make them feel uneasy. Mo Ting almost made an appearance because he couldn't bear to see her suffer. So, how could she let these bullies off the hook so easily? Seeing that Tongning didn't say anything, the man knew he was asking for it. So, all he could do was leave with Qin Lu and return to their seats. Seeing this, Yongjing thought Tongning would take the opportunity to walk away. After all, it was a rare opportunity. But Tongning did not do so. She sure had guts. However, Yongjing had no idea what Tongning was really thinking. She was thinking that no matter where she went, no matter what she wore, it would never change the fact that she was Tongning. For Mo Ting's Tongning, she would only be number one. Because of Lu Che's appearance, the atmosphere in the backstage completely changed. The people that were previously ridiculing Tongning no longer dared to roll their eyes at her. So, the atmosphere became a lot more relaxed and Tongning finally relaxed. Mo Ting's name was indeed useful. Even a simple mention of it was enough to make people tremble. When would her name have this kind of influence? Because of the rearrangement, Tongning was placed in the third position and Qin Lu was placed in the first position. However, her mood was no longer as relaxed as before. She knew she might have offended Hai Rui on behalf of her uncle. As for Tongning, she wanted Qin Lu to walk the show with this kind of mood. Her background was useful, but it didn't work every time. Uncle, will I be blacklisted from now on because I offended Hai Rui? On the eve of the show, Qin Lu asked worriedly. But who could give her an answer? Mo Ting was an unreachable person, not everyone could meet him. Uncle might not even be able to protect himself. Hearing this, Qin Lu almost fainted. She had only offended Tongning, was it that serious? The big shot did not give her an answer until Royalty's show officially started. Although Qin Lu was the opening model, it was obvious that she was a little unsettled as she walked on stage. As a result, not too long after she stepped onto the stage, she almost tripped on her dress. Qin Lu had never been in such an embarrassing situation. Luckily, the second model quickly walked onto the stage and pulled her back. But her embarrassment had already been revealed. Although unexpected situations were common on the runway, the show director and designer were not satisfied with Qin Lu's performance. Since she wanted to snatch the opening from Tongning, she should have done a high-quality job. How did she end up like this? The third model was Tongning's turn. At this moment, in a hidden corner, sat a strong man. His gaze was fixed on the runway. His wife was about to go on stage. Yongjing and the newcomer sat below the stage to watch the show. The first two models were already embarrassing enough, so everyone treated the third model as the real opening. Tongning. A person that was so cold and expressionless behind the stage. As soon as she stepped onto the stage, the tension, the positioning, the perfect control of her body and her eyes, it was like she was born on the runway and grew up on it. In fact, when she changed into a second set of clothes, the audience couldn't help but burst into thunderous applause. Was Tongning really this good? Although Yongjing didn't want to admit it, when it came to professionalism, Tongning left many models in the dust. Damn it. After all, she almost signed with Star King in the past. If not for the fact that she was with Han Yufan. Although Qin Lu was an A-grade model, through the long runway, she could clearly see the feeling Tongning gave on stage. How should one describe it? It was like Tongning had two souls in her body. She was not the same person behind the stage. She was able to accurately convey the message she wanted to convey to the guests. She was so good that, with just one glance, she was unforgettable. Mo Ting's eyes were glued to Tongning the entire time. In fact, he did not stop for even a second. He knew Tongning really needed it. Tongning scanned the dark end of the runway in search of Mo Ting. Realizing he was sitting in a secluded corner, her heart immediately warmed up. Because Tongning stood out in all aspects, after the show, the VIPs only remembered Tongning's appearance. Because, the other models, at most, had completed their tasks. But, Tongning. She was like a refreshing stream in the modeling industry. Because of this, Tongning was able to confirm one thing: not everyone that walked the opening show was a pleasant surprise, it could also be a shock. Just because the opening show wasn't exciting, it didn't mean there wouldn't be any more exciting ones later on. The show director looked at Tongning on stage. No matter what style she changed, she was able to adapt immediately. She was even able to make the corresponding movements and expressions. How did she do it? No wonder Lan Shi recommended her. However, sitting below the stage, Yongjing had a sneer on her face. No matter how good she was, she would never be able to join Cheng Tian Entertainment. Chapter 117. From the start of the show, Tongning was originally just an opening act. But, because of Qin Lu, Tongning was given more opportunities to appear on the runway. It was because of Tongning's presence that the other models became insignificant. They didn't look like anything at all. They were just empty shells walking around the runway without a soul. This was the magical part about Tongning. The show director had a whole new level of respect for Tongning. This was too rare. Not only was she professional, more importantly, her personal style was too outstanding and eye-catching. It was like she was born for the runway. She was one with the runway. Amidst his excitement, the show director noticed there was an extraordinary man sitting in the guest seat. He had the sharpest and deepest eyes, like those of an eagle. His gaze was locked onto Tongning. Was this a protective and possessive look that even a male animal could sense? It was Mo Ting. Hai Rui's Mo Ting had actually lowered his status to watch royalties show. Although there were already rumors going around backstage that Tongning and Mo Ting were friends, no one had actually seen them. Now that the show director had seen Tongning in person, he was shocked and felt a chill down his spine. If Tongning told Mo Ting about what happened backstage. Or maybe he was overthinking things. If Tongning and Hai Rui were really close, then she wouldn't be in her current position. But, how could he explain Mo Ting's gaze a moment ago? While the show director was surprised, Mo Ting's gaze also landed on him. Just as the show director was about to speak, Mo Ting smiled and gestured for him to keep quiet. In other words, he was telling the show director to shut up. The show director froze for a moment before nodding his head in a daze. It was actually Mo Ting. Not long after, the designer led the other models in for a curtain call. However, the only person that the audience could truly remember was Tongning. As for the unconvinced models backstage, they were no longer able to say a word. Not only did Tongning appear out of nowhere, even if she were to directly step onto the international stage, no one would doubt her abilities. However, in the audience, the seat that originally belonged to Mo Ting was now empty. It was like everything that had just happened was an illusion. In reality, Mo Ting had already returned to his car. Meanwhile, the show director was standing respectfully outside the car as he bent over to speak to Mo Ting. Don't tell anyone about my appearance tonight. Of course, don't worry. President Mo, the show director, quickly nodded his head and bowed. What a joke, he was only a small show director. How could he go against Hairui? Even if he was given 10 guts, he wouldn't dare. By the way, who else backstage has caused trouble for Tongning? Mo Ting asked directly. His voice seemed to be deep and magnetic, and it was even more threatening, scaring the show director to the point cold sweat broke out on his forehead. That is Qin Lu. She wasn't happy that Tongning had appeared out of nowhere, so she asked her uncle to support her. Everyone else looked down on Tongning for appearing out of nowhere. But Tongning has now proven herself. Tongning is amazing. Mo Ting didn't say a word. He should be saying that he was purposely keeping this little show director in suspense. He clearly didn't include himself in the equation, and Yongjing as well. Ting of his words. Mo two of words, of the show, of Ning, not of Mo of. The person you should be apologizing to is not me. The show director was so scared his legs turned to jelly. Not long after, Tongning and Long Jie entered the underground car park and found Mo Ting's car. Seeing the show director talking to Mo Ting, Tongning was stunned for a moment. But she quickly remembered what she had said and decided she would not cower. So, she continued walking and naturally opened the door of the Rolls-Royce under the surprised gaze of the show director, and sat down beside Mo Ting. After walking for an hour and changing into a few sets of clothes, Tongning was obviously tired. Seeing this, Mo Ting patted her on the head affectionately and gestured for her to lie down for a while. Tongning shook her head. As there were still outsiders around, Mo Ting turned his head and looked at the show director again. I don't want those that have caused trouble for Tongning to live a good life. What do you think? Yes, the show director nodded his head repeatedly. He must have forgotten to bring his eyes when he left home. How could he be so blind? He almost offended Tongning. You should know what to do. Plus, you have never seen me or us. I understand. Don't worry, President Mo, I will keep my mouth shut. After hearing the man's guarantee, Mo Ting rolled up the car window and naturally hugged Tongning. He then instructed Lu Che, start the car. The show director held his breath. He didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Mo Ting's king-like aura was too oppressive. Now that he thought about it, the small-time models and actresses were too brave. Luckily, Tongning didn't hold a grudge. Otherwise, it wouldn't be impossible for all of them to die today. Looking at the relationship between Mo Ting and Tongning, they couldn't just be friends. But, Tongning. Why didn't she use Mo Ting to help her career? The show director was a little confused. But, after thinking about it, what kind of person was Mo Ting? He didn't allow their relationship to be revealed. So, no matter what evidence Tongning brought out, no one would believe her. Above all, Tongning's ability was there, all she lacked was a platform. Afterwards, Lan Shi gave the show director a phone call. How is Tongning? All I can say is, she is still the top model from a few years ago. Her professionalism hasn't been neglected. In fact, she has become even more charming. In that case, did I tell you that I've already signed Tongning? I simply asked her to come today to help her warm up. Lan Shi laughed. You have good taste, the show director replied. However, this good taste had a double meaning. After all, Tongning still had Mo Ting backing her up. Of course, he did not reveal the relationship between Tongning and Mo Ting to Lan Shi. He still wanted to survive in the industry. That's good. In that case, did Yongjing bring a newcomer with her today? Yes, but I noticed Yongjing's attitude towards Tongning isn't very good. The show director asked. They have a grudge, plus, Yongjing doesn't know I've signed Tongning. I will announce it in a few days. The show director came to a realization. Afterwards, he felt sorry for Yongjing. It was bad enough that Lan Shi didn't trust him, but Tongning was definitely not going to let her off easily either. This only proved that Yongjing was even more blind than him. Most importantly, when he returned backstage, he overheard Yongjing bragging about Cheng Tian and belittling Tongning. No matter how good she is, she will only be here in the next few years. On the other hand, you still have a long road ahead of you. Plus, no matter how professional she is, she still won't be able to enter Cheng Tian. Chapter 118. Yongjing, I don't know how many years Tongning has left, but if you continue to go against Tongning, then you will only have a few good days left. The show director couldn't help but speak up for Tongning. According to Tongning's status, it is indeed impossible for her to enter a top agency. After all, the industry is full of talented people. But even Lan, she can't say that Tongning isn't good enough. As a manager, don't you think you are taking yourself too seriously? Yongjing glared at the show director in displeasure. He seemed to be closing the door a little too wide. Even though he and President Lan were friends, he couldn't interfere with her family business. Don't worry, since I said this, then I am 100% confident that Tongning will never be able to enter Chengtian. The show director felt Yongjing was too confident and thought too highly of herself. Even though she was Lan Shi's right-hand woman, Lan Shi was still the CEO. No wonder Lan Shi didn't let her know and took the initiative to sign Tongning. It seemed there was going to be a good show to watch. By the way, President Lan and I are friends, so I have been quite polite to you. From now on, as long as it is my show, don't come again. I don't want you to get tired of each other. I will personally give President Lan a phone call. As for Qin Lu, she brought her uncle to snatch the opening of the show. This was going to be a good news topic. She wondered if Mo Ting would be satisfied with this. On the way home, Tongning leaned comfortably against Mo Ting's body. It seemed there was no other place in this world that could make her feel safer and more at ease than his embrace. Mo Ting was quite satisfied with Tongning's performance. It seemed Tongning was seriously considering their relationship and wasn't just saying it. Lan Shi told me to teach Yongjing a lesson, but I ended up making her even more arrogant. There's no way someone like Lan Shi wouldn't have guessed this result. Her intention was to make Yongjing arrogant, Mo Ting explained gently. Sometimes, we often teach disobedient subordinates a lesson like this. When they don't know their limits, this is the only effective way to deal with them. Tongning smiled and replied, I can understand why. When you tried to persuade a person with good intentions, it was usually faster and more memorable than making her fall. Are you tired? Fortunately, at that time in France, there was a record of 12 consecutive hours of changing and trying on clothes. Tongning wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's waist and whispered in his ear, Can't you tell, I simply want to act coquettishly? Mo Ting let out a gentle laugh as he subconsciously hugged her tighter. After returning home, the couple quickly washed up and went to bed. Mo Ting accompanied Tongning to watch TV. As the words Little Tongning kept appearing on screen, Mo Ting's eyebrows furrowed. This Lan Yu has been very active in front of the TV lately. It seems Star Age is trying to get her on a variety show. But I can't do anything to her just because she's called Xiao Tongning. If you do that, you will only be called petty. Not to mention, Lan Yu is only 16 years old. In the eyes of the audience, she is just a child and should be treated gently. She doesn't think she's petty. Ting, you don't need to get involved in this matter. I'm sure Lan Shi isn't used to this kind of behavior. I'm sure part of the reason why she prepared a grand contract signing ceremony for me was to remind Star Age not to go overboard. Lan Shi's use of a team will save us a lot of energy. After all, for someone like Lan Yu who can't even be considered an opponent, I don't want to waste my energy. She's too young. Although she's small, her methods are not small at all, Mo Ting commented. Of course, he didn't need to make a move. But Lan Yu shouldn't think that she wouldn't have to pay a price for using Lan Yu. Although Star Age wanted Lan Yu to surpass Lan Yu, they still needed Tongning's fans to agree. So, Mo Ting had an idea. Although Tongning had signed with Cheng Tian, he still needed to handle the power behind her. Especially when it came to managing her fans. A professional and cohesive fan club would be able to do big things. Above all, the thing that made Mo Ting wary of Lan Yu was her similarity to Tongning. If Lan Shi didn't make a move, he definitely wouldn't have the patience to continue waiting. The next morning, news of Qin Lu bringing the big-shot actor's uncle to fight for the opening slot was made into the news. Of course, this was a joke because she wasn't happy with Tongning's sudden appearance. But everyone that saw the show knew Tongning's ability and professionalism was something that Qin Lu couldn't compare to. However, no one expected Tongning to cause so much trouble backstage. Of course, The big shot actor was also ridiculed. Who would have thought a highly respected senior in the film and television industry would suppress someone else for the sake of his niece? They did manage to snatch the opening slot, but so what? In the end, they were still smashed to smithereens. Yongjing thought Tongning was behind all this. After all, she was a vengeful person. So, Yongjing couldn't help but reveal a look of ridicule. Tongning sure is narrow-minded. She won't even let go of a small matter like this. At this moment, they were waiting for a meeting in the office. Hearing Yongjing's words, Luo Hao felt it was quite funny. How could she only talk about Tongning and not mention that she was also involved? I also watched last night's show. Tongning indeed had nothing to say. So, are you regretting agreeing to help me stop her from entering Chengtian? This matter is already in the past, Luo Hao said as he twirled the pen in his hand. Luo Hao said as he twirled the pen in his hand, if you have the time, why don't you train a few good ones? That way, you will be able to compete with Tongning. Have you considered what would happen if Tongning signs with a better company? Aren't you afraid of being played to death by her? There are some things that can't be undone once done, Yongjing said with a complicated expression as she lowered her head. Yongjing said with a complicated expression as she lowered her head. She had never expected Tongning to rise up so quickly and had no way of controlling and suppressing her. Rather than saying she was in a difficult situation, it would be more accurate to say she had never met a scheming opponent like Tongning. This made her excited. She was determined to fight to the death with Tongning. Sometimes, I really don't understand you, Luo Hao shook his head. But, I can't compare to your hypocrisy. While the two were talking, Lan Shi entered the meeting room with her secretary. In addition, she brought along someone unexpected. Zihao, have a seat. And Zihao? Hearing this name, Yongjing and Luo Hao suddenly felt a little guilty. Who would have thought? Lan Shi actually managed to invite this person back. Why? Of course, what they didn't expect was yet to come. Chapter 119. And Zihao was once Cheng Tian Entertainment's artist's director. He had groomed countless celebrities and was once Lan Shi's best business partner. 2 years ago, due to his relationship with one of his artists being exposed, the two had a huge argument that night. In the end, they got into a car accident. One died and the other was injured. Afterwards, Zihao gave up on himself and left home. Of course, Zihao had always known who was the one that leaked this information. However, the two people that were involved were once his most trusted friends and family. I am really happy that Zihao has returned to Chengtian, Lan Shi said. And Zihao was dressed in a black suit and looked handsome. Perhaps it was because he had been betrayed by a friend, he looked at everyone with a frivolous and lazy aura. Lan Shi, I never said I was coming back. Don't tell me you want me to work with people that are worse than pigs and dogs. After hearing this, Yongjing and Luo Hao subconsciously tensed up. You will be back. Wait in my office, I have something to show you. Lan Shi seemed to know he would say this, so she immediately called him away. Luo Hao and Yongjing let out a sigh of relief. Lan Shi's eyes lit up as she said to Yongjing and Luo Hao, I am quite satisfied with the appearance of the newcomer that I have recruited. However, she still needs to undergo professional training. Does President Lan want Zihao to take responsibility? Yongjing guessed. No. He can't manage newcomers at the moment. Lan Shi shook her head. Lan Shi shook her head, she knew what Yongjing was thinking, so, I'll leave this matter to you. Yongjing and Luo Hao were a little confused. Why did Lan Shi bring in Zihao back? Lan Shi, of course, couldn't reveal the show that was about to begin. After entering the office, she saw Zihao sitting on the sofa with his legs dangling from the coffee table. Lan Shi smiled. Are you impatient? If you have something to say, just say it. Lan Shi pulled out Tongning's information from her drawer and handed it to Zihao. I want you to manage this model. I don't manage any artists, especially women. Have a look first. Zihao impatiently received the information from Lan Shi as well as a video of Tongning's runway show. As soon as he looked at it, he was shocked. Their temperaments are similar, right? Lan Shi laughed. Tongning is an interesting person. After you have a look, give me a reply. Oh, by the way, I've already signed Tongning, it's just that I haven't announced it to the public yet. It will happen in a few days, not even Yongjing and Luo Hao know about it. Tomorrow, Tongning will be attending a perfume event. Help me notify her, it will be a chance for you to get to know each other. And Zihao took a few glances, then put the information away. A sinister smile appeared on his face. No matter how much she resembles Yun'er, she's still imitating others and making a fool of herself. Back when Tongning exploded in popularity, your Yun'er was still nowhere to be found. Promise me, you'll think about it. And Zihao scoffed as he left Lan Shi's office. He didn't care about any of the advertisements. Of course, he had no idea, because he didn't notify Tongning in time, he had created a huge crisis for her. Afterwards, Lan Shi gave Tongning a phone call. I've sent your new manager's resume to your email. Make sure you check it. Tongning, this person is very capable, but he has a wild personality. If you can get him to work for you, it will be like adding wings to a tiger. Tongning furrowed her brows. What she needed most was someone loyal. But, since it was Lan Shi's arrangement, Tongning did not reject. I will look into it. Tongning, you've received the Special Contribution Award at the Annual Model Awards. On top of that, you've already signed with Cheng Tian. This has already allowed you to return to the position of an A-grade model. What you need now is the support of top fashion resources and recognition. I understand. Tongning was well aware that at the age of 26, it was impossible for her to step onto the big stage. So, this Special Contribution Award, for her, held a lot of meaning. My expectation for you is not only do you want to return to your position as the top model in Beijing, you also want to become one of the top models in the world. Tongning smiled without saying a word. As a model, she wanted to achieve these goals from the bottom of her heart. But she already had Mo Ting. Everything she did was so she could match up to him. I will work hard. Tongning hung up the phone and turned to look at Mo Ting. At this time, Mo Ting was already holding onto Tongning's laptop and looking at an email. Mo Ting's expression did not look too good when he saw the manager that Lan Shi had sent him. What's wrong? Tongning asked as she sat down beside Mo Ting. I suddenly feel a little regretful for pushing you towards Cheng Tian, Mo Ting said as he wrapped his arm around Tongning. It seems, this and Zihao has been with female artists before. After hearing this, Tongning let out a laugh. So, you're jealous? I haven't even seen him yet. Jealous? Mo Ting shook his head. If you don't take good care of your own property and lose it in the end, who can you blame? I will keep my distance from him. Tongning wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's waist. Tongning wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's waist and said in a serious tone, you know, I hate it when I have a lover that is ambiguous with someone else. Mo Ting understood what she was referring to. After being tricked by Han Yufan, Tongning had already reached a point where she had zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. Within the industry, there are a lot of people that have no choice. These are all excuses, Tongning replied straightforwardly. Mo Ting, I am being serious. I will only say this once. When I was with you, I already made my attitude clear. I will never hide anything from you. Whether it's in the past, present or future, no matter what happens, I will be honest with you. Even if I couldn't say it out loud at the time, I will definitely find an opportunity to tell you. So, if you have any misunderstandings towards me, please wait for me patiently, okay? As long as you wait for me, I will do my best to run to your side. Mo Ting's heart was a little moved. He and Tongning had been together for so long, but they hadn't had many opportunities to listen to each other's thoughts. After the novelty of marriage, it was time to face the cruel reality of life. If they were to be together for the rest of their lives, they were bound to experience hardships. I will watch over you. Mo Ting lowered his head and placed a gentle kiss on Tongning's forehead. The two of us share the same heart, walk the same path and live the same life. Then, I have nothing to be afraid of. Not afraid. The couple looked at each other, their eyes were filled with love. If they got closer, just a little bit closer, that would be love and marriage. That would be an invincible force. The autumn night was cold enough to penetrate one's heart. And Zihao did not tell Tongning that he was going to promote a famous perfume brand. In fact, he did not even look at it and did not even turn on his computer. As a result, on the day of the event, Tongning had no idea what was going to happen. The organizers of the event gave Lan Shi a phone call to ask what was wrong with Tongning. Was she throwing a tantrum because Lan Yu was involved? Lan Shi never imagined that An Zihao had no intention of taking over Tongning, nor did he tell her about the event. Chapter 120. All of a sudden, Tongning refuses to share stage with little Tongning. Tongning skipped perfume event to avoid Lan Yu. Tongning's magnanimity is all an act. All sorts of negative news quickly made their way onto the entertainment news. As Lan Yu was still young, adults tended to be more magnanimous towards a 16-year-old child. So, the news of Tongning skipping a perfume event for no reason was immediately blown out of proportion by her mother's fans. Of course, Star Age also added fuel to the fire. When it came to using Tongning to create hype, they did not hold back. Although Lan Shi wasn't ashamed of Star Age's actions, she still immediately gave An Zihao a phone call. "Zihao, have you seen today's news?" "Yes," An Zihao replied as he held his forehead. In reality, he didn't notice early in the morning. But, as soon as he heard Tongning's name, he realized she was one of his artists. Do you know how much effort Tongning has put in to get to where she is today? Even if you don't respect others, you shouldn't destroy them. Does Tongning owe you anything? Does Tongning owe you anything? Lan Shi's tone was filled with anger. "I will first suppress the media. But, I don't think Lan Yu will give in." An Zihao quickly washed his face and flipped through Tongning's information. He had no intention of harming anyone. He simply didn't expect the incident would have such a huge impact on Tongning. Lan Yu took advantage of her young age and completely exploited the sympathy of the audience. Netizens even claimed that Tongning had hurt the younger generation. All she did was use the nickname Little Tongning. They wanted Tongning to apologize and explain why she didn't attend the perfume event. An Zihao watched as Tongning continued to climb up the ladder. He didn't feel good, so he immediately pulled out his phone and gave Tongning a phone call. "Hello. I am Tongning." A cold voice sounded from the other side of the phone. "I am An Zihao." Hearing An Zihao's name, Tongning's expression turned cold. She turned off the TV and returned the living room to silence. "Please speak." "Regarding the perfume event. If Mr. An doesn't want to be my manager, you can speak to President Lan directly. I don't actually have high expectations for my manager. As for the incident with the platform, the negative news has already been released. I don't think there's anything left to say. I will think of a way to deal with PR, you don't need to worry about it." Tongning expressed her attitude firmly. This surprised An Zihao. So this was Tongning's temper. Most importantly, Tongning did not give him a chance to explain as she directly hung up the phone. Did he get into trouble? In reality, it wasn't that Tongning wasn't angry. But, getting angry wouldn't solve the problem. Lan Yu was forcing her step by step. She wanted to see her keep making mistakes so Lan Yu could replace her. She could not possibly fall into Lan Yu's trap. Afterwards, Lan Shi gave Tongning a phone call. "Tongning, Zihao has indeed wronged you. I'll tell him to deal with it immediately. Actually, President Lan, you can assign a normal manager to me." "I don't need a top-notch manager," Tongning replied. "I never expected the two of you to dislike each other, but Zihao has already spoken to me about this matter. He will step in to resolve it," Lan Shi assured. "Trust him, he will handle this matter well." Tongning did not say anything. She simply couldn't understand An Zihao. Was he born to get into trouble and then fix it later? Online, the video of Lan Yu crying out her grievances still touched the hearts of hundreds of millions of netizens. Meanwhile, Tongning had been pushed into the eye of the storm by someone she thought she was no match for. The strength of a 16-year-old couldn't be underestimated. However, Lan Yu had not used it in the right way. Afterwards, Mo Ting gave Tongning a phone call. His voice was gentle. "I saw the news. How are you feeling?" "To be honest, I feel terrible." Tongning shook her head and sighed. "When I first laid my eyes on Lan Yu, I already knew she wasn't simple. As expected, I simply didn't want her to be caught up in a deceitful environment at the age of 16. But now that I think about it, it seems she enjoys it quite a bit. In this industry, What people chase after is fame and fortune. Age shouldn't be her shield anymore. But, I didn't go to the event because I didn't even know about it. Tongning was a little upset. Do you still plan to go easy on Lan Yu? Hearing Mo Ting's question, Tongning was a little surprised. She quickly shook her head, no. Since Lan Yu didn't care about her own future and used such an extreme method to do something dangerous, why should she worry about others? Good girl. If I was in her position, I wouldn't go easy on her. After speaking, Mo Ting waved his hand at Lu Che, go investigate Lan Yu's school. No matter how big or small it is, don't let go of anything. Understood, President. At the same time, take control of the media and reduce Tongning's popularity. But didn't the madam say she didn't want you to get involved? Lu Che scratched his head awkwardly. Mo Ting squinted his eyes as a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. I personally don't like Lan Yu. Is this reason enough? Lu Che broke out in a cold sweat as he quickly nodded his head and left Mo Ting's office. Of course, this was because he could no longer control his heartache towards Tongning. In this industry, how could she bully his people and treat him like he didn't exist? Tongning had no idea that Mo Ting had already made a move behind her back. Not long after, she asked Long Jie to contact the perfume company and ask them to give her a chance to explain herself. Regardless of whether it was Zihao's fault, it was the truth that she didn't go to the event. So, she needed to apologize sincerely. As for Lan Yu, she naturally had other ways to deal with her. Long Jie put in a lot of effort to convince the man, but he only gave Tongning 10 minutes to explain herself. Tongning did not complain. Throwing a tantrum would never solve the problem at hand. So, even if she only had 10 minutes, she still tried her best. 3 p.m. Tongning arrived at the perfume company. However, she did not see the person in charge. However, she did not complain. It wasn't until 2 hours later that the person was finally moved by her attitude. The person in charge was a burly mixed-race man. As soon as he saw Tongning, he immediately started counting down. You only have 10 minutes. You can start now. I'm sorry, Mr. Blair. I would like to apologize for my absence, but I didn't do it on purpose and it has nothing to do with Lan Yu. Please don't listen to the rumors. I believe that my love for perfume is no less than yours. I have a special bottle of perfume that I would like to give to you. I hope you like it. Also, I am here today to apologize to you in case any misunderstandings were caused. As for the penalty for breaching the contract, I will pay you double. From start to finish, Tongning's attitude was gentle and calm. She wanted to tell the man that she was simply there to apologize and nothing more. As soon as the man saw the perfume, his eyes lit up. Where did you get this perfume from? Does Miss Tang also know about perfume? I know a thing or two. Since it was a misunderstanding, let's forget about it. I will get the staff to release a statement. Miss Tang, I think we can be friends. Blair was very interested in the perfume that Tongning had brought. It smelled very special. Of course, the Tang family was a family that had been producing perfume for over 100 years. As soon as Tongning came to see Blair, she had already decided that she was going to please him. As expected, as for Lan Yu. See you later. Her patience towards Lan Yu had already reached its limit. Chapter 121. Thank you, Mr. Blair, for your understanding. However, because of my mistake, Miss Lan Yu has been hurt. I feel a little bad. As soon as Blair heard this, he smiled. Why don't you pick out a gift and give it to her? When others use it as a pretext, your generosity will help resolve the awkwardness. Originally, Tongning's absence was her personal problem. But Lan Yu's management agency had blown it out of proportion and shamelessly created hype for their artist. The angry fans didn't know the reason, but how could Blair not see it clearly? After all, he believed in his own judgment of people. Tongning, a person that knew how to cater to a person's interests, was definitely someone that understood the ways of the world. Above all, Tongning did not get angry even after he made her wait outside for 2 hours. This meant she wasn't someone that would be affected by the way he addressed her. With the addition of the perfume she had given him, Blair's heart naturally tilted towards Tongning's side. How about this? Since you gave me such a special perfume, I will also give you a gift. Recently, released a fragrance called Charm. There are only 10 bottles in the entire world. I will get my assistant to wrap it up and send it to Star Age under your name. Mr. Blair, this is too much. Tongning felt a little guilty. Is also at fault for this incident. If the staff had been more detailed and contacted your manager before the event, this wouldn't have happened. To be honest, it's a bit unfair for you to have to endure all of this on your own. Consider this a token of my appreciation. Since we are friends, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Thank you, Mr. Blair. Blair looked at Tongning, at this woman who had remained calm throughout the entire ordeal. In reality, he felt a sense of admiration for her. He had seen too many situations where one would cry and two would throw a tantrum. Tongning's calmness was especially precious. Dealing with smart people was a pleasant thing to do. From the moment Tongning mentioned that Lan Yu had been hurt, Blair took advantage of the situation and suggested Tongning give him a gift. How could Tongning not have thought of this? However, she couldn't be the one to deliver the gift. Otherwise, no one knew what kind of trap Star Age would set for Tongning. So, Blair suggested she deliver the gift herself. Although she would be using Tongning's name, Tongning wouldn't be the one to personally deliver the gift. If Star Age dared to mess around, they would be falling right into Tongning's trap. Of course, Blair wasn't going to help her for free. The perfume that Tongning had gifted him had a huge background. Blair had been looking for a perfume formula that could break into the Northern European market. Now, he knew who to work with: the Tang family. The two chatted happily. Not long after, Blair's assistant asked for instructions on how to send out the gift. Blair instructed his staff to send out the gift using Tongning's name. Miss Tang, can you tell me the real reason why you were absent from the event? It turned out that Blair did not believe that she was absent on purpose. Tongning thought for a moment before replying, actually it's because I've just signed with a new agency and haven't been in contact with my new manager yet, so there are some issues with the handover. I'm sorry. So, you didn't even know about this event. Fine, you've protected your agency and manager. Tongning raised her glass of red wine and clinked it gently against Blair's. That would require Mr. Blair to be magnanimous. The two chatted like good friends for quite some time. However, just as night fell, Tongning received a phone call from Mo Ting. Where are you? I'll come pick you up right now. I'm still at Okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Mo Ting immediately hung up the phone. He did not ask Lu Che to drive because he wanted to personally take his wife home. Blair noticed Tongning's soft voice on the phone and laughed. Boyfriend? Tongning shook her head and ran her fingers through her hair before replying in an even gentler voice. My lover. My lover. Tongning said these 3 words naturally. She had already said that she would no longer run away from him. Of course, this my lover also surprised Blair. After all, it was rare for a popular model to reveal their private life to others, let alone admit they were married. Aren't you afraid that I'll tell others? No, Tongning replied straightforwardly. Because if I tell others, it won't do you any good. You wouldn't do something like that. You're really smart, Blair praised. But, my wife is even smarter than you. Tongning smiled without refuting. In everyone's heart, their lover was a godlike existence. Mo Ting was an example, no one could compare to him. 10 minutes passed and Mo Ting arrived at As soon as the manager saw Mo Ting, he did not dare to delay as he immediately escorted him to the VIP room. At this time, Blair finally had the chance to see Tongning's lover and see what he looked like. To be honest, he was a little surprised. He was surprised because even an outsider like him knew that the man in front of him was the unreachable king of the entertainment industry. He was the eligible bachelor that made all female celebrities fall head over heels for him. Yet, he was actually Tongning's lover. Mo Ting looked at Tongning as she leaned against the table and looked at Blair questioningly. Blair smiled and explained, Your wife's alcohol tolerance isn't too good, don't worry, my secretary was in the room just now. In case you misunderstood, let me explain a little. But, are you really her lover? Blair pretended to be suspicious. Tongning had already admitted it so generously. So, what about the mysterious CEO of Hai Rui? What about his attitude towards Tongning? I just asked her who she was talking to on the phone. She said, my lover. After hearing Blair's words, Mo Ting's expression finally softened a little. He gently patted Tongning on the head and replied calmly, I am her lover. I hope you can protect her well. Mo Ting nodded his head at the man before lifting Tongning in his arms and leaving This woman really had no alcohol tolerance. She dared to get drunk in front of a stranger from now on? Tongning sensed Mo Ting's displeasure, so she slowly opened her eyes and wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's neck. Ting. How am I supposed to drive when you're like this? Huh. Mo Ting's heart melted. How could he still be angry? I'm not drunk. I'm just pretending. I know how much I can drink. Mo Ting smiled at a place she couldn't see as he helped her sit up. If you have something to say, let's talk at home, it's easy to be photographed here. Tongning was silent for a while before she suddenly said, today. I set up a trap for Lan Yu. I think it was a little cruel. You've already been very forgiving, Mo Ting replied. I'm afraid, one day, I will become insensitive. That is the price she should pay. Even a 16-year-old needs to pay for her actions. Chapter 122. I'll give her one last chance. If she still doesn't know how to repent and insists on using me to advance, then there's nothing I can do. Tongning said lazily as she hugged Mo Ting. Perhaps, it was because she was a little tired. Mo Ting subconsciously slowed down the car and patted Tongning on the head so she could rest comfortably on his shoulder. If you're wrong, then you're wrong. If you're wrong, you need to pay the price. Tongning rubbed her head against Mo Ting's shoulder without saying another word. Her heart was still moved by Mo Ting's words, I am her lover. In fact, she couldn't help but let out a laugh. What's wrong? Nothing. I just feel like this life is good. After speaking, Tongning placed a gentle kiss on Mo Ting's neck and placed her hand on the back of Mo Ting's hand. At a red light, Mo Ting turned his head and placed a kiss on Tongning's cheek. You are the best treasure I've ever picked up. And, aren't you also my treasure? Following Lan Yu's pitiful act, the online discussions about Tongning increased. However, there were also many voices of opposition. After all, with Tongning's current status, there was no reason for her to go against a rookie model. So, Tongning's fans pointed out that Lan Yu was creating hype. Of course, because of this accusation, Lan Yu once again burst into tears. Fans and passers-by from both sides were now in an uproar. That night, Star Age received a gift from Tongning. As soon as Lan Yu's manager saw it, he laughed. She even got a card. It seems Tongning is quite afraid of you. Lan Yu scoffed, but she was still very interested in Tongning's gift. Tongning sure was generous. I never thought Tongning would be so good with people. She even gave her enemy something good. Lan Yu's manager was a tall and skinny young man. He hadn't been a manager for long. That was obviously stupid. Lan Yu pulled out the bottle from the gift box and instructed her assistant to find a few pranks. She then placed them inside the box and winked at her manager. These are the real things Tongning sent me. She wants to warn me. Her manager's eyes grew wide. He suddenly felt Lan Yu was a little scary. Was she really only 16 years old? You've already tasted the sweetness and Tongning has even given you a present. Shouldn't you know when to stop? The entire Tianyi entertainment was destroyed by Tongning. Do you think Tongning would be afraid of you? Lan Yu looked at her manager with a hint of ridicule. You are such a coward, how could you be my manager? If you think I'm not capable enough, you can tell the president to replace me. After the manager finished speaking, she left Lan Yu's waiting room. How could a 16-year-old girl know so many tricks to harm others? Thinking about it, it was a little scary. Lan Yu watched as her manager left and scoffed. So what if it's Tongning? I'm so young, but isn't the outside world protecting me? After speaking, Lan Yu put away the bottle of aromatherapy and said to her assistant, take a photo of everything here and post it online. Tell everyone these gifts were sent by Tongning. The assistant was the same age as Lan Yu. To be honest, when he heard Lan Yu's instructions, he was a little shocked. But what Tongning sent was obviously. The people on the outside don't care about the truth. All they want is entertainment and they want to watch a fight. Lan Yu shrugged her shoulders as she lifted her leg and kicked her assistant. Hurry up and do it. After being kicked, the assistant had no choice but to hold back his anger and complete Lan Yu's instructions. Of course, Lan Yu took advantage of her young age and thought she could continue to use Tongning to create hype and do whatever she wanted. But how could there be such a good thing in this world? Tongning gave her one last chance, but Lan Yu didn't appreciate it. In fact, she didn't even go through her agency before she sent out a message claiming Tongning had sent her a prank to scare her and provoke her. She was so scared that she started bawling on the internet again. This time the netizens exploded. They thought Tongning wouldn't even let a little kid off. Not only did she humiliate her, she even used such a method to get revenge. She had gone too far. This message exploded in the middle of the night. At this time, Tongning was sleeping when Lan Shi gave her a phone call, reminding her to check the trending topics online. Tongning freed herself from Mo Ting's embrace and pulled out her phone. Words like Tongning get lost, Tongning is a bitch, and all sorts of insults flooded the internet. The person she was bullying was a 16-year-old girl. The incident with Tongning had once again escalated. Mo Ting was woken up by her actions and sat up. Seeing the news online, his heart ached as he pulled Tongning into his embrace. You can make your move. Do you still think we should give her a chance this time? I'm not that forgiving. Tongning said in a muffled voice as she pushed Mo Ting away. Go to sleep first. I'll give Lan Shi a phone call. Don't worry, I promise you, tomorrow, Lan Yu will completely disappear from our sight. Mo Ting let out a sigh as he hugged Tongning and gestured for her to make the phone call. He simply hugged her quietly. Tongning was helpless. She knew Mo Ting wanted to keep her company, so she smiled gently as she dialed Lan Shi's number. I've already seen the hotspots. This Lan Yu seems to be quite arrogant, Lan Shi said angrily. On the other side of the phone, Lan Shi's voice was also filled with anger. Tomorrow, I will go look for the CEO of Star Age and ask them to settle this matter. Otherwise, Cheng Tian's artists are not to be trifled with. I can handle this matter myself, Tongning replied calmly. You don't need to look for the CEO of Star Age. As soon as Lan Shi heard this, a complicated look appeared in her eyes. Because Tongning said she could solve the problem on her own. Lan Shi suddenly wanted to know how Tongning was going to turn the situation around. So, she quickly replied, okay, if by tomorrow, you still haven't solved the problem, I will use my methods. There's no need. As soon as Lan Shi made a move, the fact that she had signed with Cheng Tian would be exposed. For Yongjing and the others, this would no longer be a fresh experience. Of course, games needed to be played slowly. She couldn't reveal all her trump cards. Dealing with one Lan Yu wasn't worth it. Above all, she still had Mo Ting backing her up. If Mo Ting didn't make a move, how could Cheng Tian have a chance? In that case, I'll wait for your news. By the way, has Zihao contacted you? He has, but, since he doesn't want to be my manager, President Lan shouldn't force him, Tongning replied straightforwardly. And Zihao's prejudice and arrogance had caused her to spend so much effort to fix the problem. She really didn't want this top-notch manager. I'll give him one more chance. President Lan, I'm hanging up now. Tongning avoided the call. Lan Yu. The present was given by Blair from EH. Tomorrow, I'll watch you fry it. Chapter 123. Lan Yu's popularity rose quickly. In the eyes of the public, she was a downright oppressed person. At the tender age of 16, she had come out to make a name for herself. In the end, because of the name Tongning, she was ostracized and humiliated. Especially after the gift incident was revealed, it created a series of hot topics online. Some reporters even teamed up with their colleagues to dig Tongning out and demanded she step out and apologize. Otherwise, they would not let the matter rest. The weak indeed deserved sympathy, but that wasn't a reason for them to do whatever they wanted. So, while Tongning was in the eye of the storm, she asked Long Jie to release a statement admitting that she had indeed given Lan Yu a gift. But she did not explain anything else. In an instant, this statement created a huge uproar. Tongning had actually admitted that she had given Lan Yu a gift. Everyone thought Tongning had gone crazy. She did not deny the rumors, apologize, or do any PR. Instead, she stepped out and admitted that she had indeed given Lan Yu a gift. The netizens laughed as they ridiculed Tongning. They felt Tongning's IQ was only SOSO. Her high EQ was indeed exposed after a while. Meanwhile, those that were scolding her became even more aggressive. Since Tongning had admitted to giving Lan Yu a gift, why wasn't she apologizing? This would only make her situation worse. From the perspective of those in the industry, even if it was true, they couldn't admit to it. How could they admit to it? No one understood Tongning's actions, not even Star Age or Cheng Tian. The only person that had confidence in her was Mo Ting, who was watching the news with his hand on his chin. Even Lu Che, who had seen many of Tongning's methods of retaliation, was still worried for her. Lan Yu was determined to use this incident to make it impossible for her to make a comeback. Yet, she actually jumped right into her trap. Lu Che was a little confused. Seeing Mo Ting did not look worried, he couldn't help but ask, "President, what is the madam's intention? I asked you to investigate Lan Yu's background, and what are the results?" "I will have it on your desk this evening," Lu Che quickly replied. Seeing Mo Ting nod his head, he then asked, "President, didn't you trust the madam? Why did you still? The only bad thing about your madam is that she is merciful. She has done what she needed to do to retaliate. So, what I need to do for her is to prevent any future problems." In other words, Tongning wanted to prove her innocence and put Lan Yu beyond redemption. As for Mo Ting, he wanted Lan Yu to never make a comeback. Of course, after Tongning's admission was released, Lan Yu's arrogance naturally increased. She was determined to leave a pitiful image in the hearts of the public. So, Star Age released a response regarding Lan Yu, stating that they would forgive Tongning for the hurt she had caused. Forgive, the onlookers all voiced out their opinions, asking her not to use the name Tongning Jr., saying that she was actually 100 times more beautiful than Tongning. They also asked her to give up on the path of imitation because she had a better future than Tongning. Some netizens even criticized Tongning, claiming her character was worse than a 16-year-old. He said Tongning's character was outdated. It was a relatively well-known marketing account and had even started a collaboration with artists that wanted Tongning to get lost. The internet was filled with all sorts of curses. At this time, A's CEO, who had been stood up by Tongning a couple of days ago, was interviewed by the media. He was asked a question by Tongning and was asked to give his opinion. Blair had already informed everyone in the company, so, the CEO's opinion was as follows: "Kids these days are very scheming." The media froze for a moment. They felt A's statement was completely opposite to the majority of netizens. "Can you tell us the reason?" The media was excited as they continued to pursue the matter. Firstly, has already released a statement explaining the misunderstanding between them. She is extremely sincere and has personally come to apologize. She has also explained the reason why she did not attend the event. This was originally her private matter. What does it have to do with anyone else? We at are all confused. Why is Miss Lan crying? The reporters were once again stunned by A's response. That's right, this was originally Tongning's private matter. Why did Lan Yu step out and cry at the first opportunity? Secondly, when Miss Tang didn't appear at A's event, Miss Lan immediately complained. How did she know Miss Tang was targeting her? Was it purely speculation? However, this subjective assumption pushed Miss Tang into the heart of the struggle. If you want the wronged person to step out and explain herself, what is there to explain? All you see is a 16-year-old child being pitiful. What about the wronged person? The reporters looked at each other in dismay. They had been led astray by this accusation. They had never considered the issue from Tongning's point of view. Of course, had not made their move yet. The incident had not reached its climax yet. Blair wasn't stupid. This was an opportunity for to advertise for free. How could he let it go so easily? So, the reason he allowed to participate in the fight was because, apart from helping Tongning, he could also use the incident to increase his reputation. He had to help. As for how he could help, of course, he had to find a way. As soon as A's statement was released, Star Age and Lan Yu exploded. They immediately questioned telling them not to distort the truth and not to help Tongning slander a 16-year-old girl. In Star Age's words, they said, "The truth is already in front of us, yet the other party is still struggling." This time, couldn't be bothered to say anything. So, they directly replied on their official website, "Karma has its own rules. Even if you are trying to create hype, you should have a bottom line. Let's give the young girl one last chance to admit her mistake. Otherwise, we will see the evidence. See the evidence. Evidence." Actually mentioned the word evidence. They were pointing out that Lan Yu had no bottom line. The hype online was getting stronger and stronger. All of a sudden, the netizens didn't know who to believe. Some people said was trying to create hype, while others said was confident and logical. Plus, they had evidence in their hands, so it should be true. Meanwhile, some people were curious as to what A's so-called evidence was. Because of this, A's reputation rose to an unbelievable level. Of course, Star Age was at a loss. This time, they were betting on the company's reputation with Lan Yu. Yet, claimed they had evidence in their hands. What evidence could they possibly have? "Even Tongning has admitted to giving me a present," Lan Yu disagreed. She felt was deliberately trying to mystify the situation. This must be a ploy by Tongning to make a comeback. Does she think she still has a chance? Chapter 124. So, Star Age's response was, "Evidence? We'll wait and see. A kind person will never bow down to the devil." Seeing this response, Long Jie's expression twisted. How shameless. Has Star Age been cursed this time? Why are they playing along with Lan Yu? Tongning shook her head with a perpetual smile on her face. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer she was. She didn't know anything else, but she knew, the way Lan Yu was throwing dirty water at her made her feel less guilty. After all, dealing with a child made her feel bad. But now, she didn't feel guilty at all. She's only 16 years old and she's already like this. When she gets older, she'll be like a god. TSK. Tongning did not say a word. She simply placed everything in her hands. The public's demands for evidence were getting louder and louder. From the looks of it, Star Age was adamant that Tongning was bullying a 16-year-old child. No matter what others said, they were determined to protect their artists. Blair was smart because he knew how to seize the opportunity. Since Star Age was going to get in his way, then there was no need for him to hold back. Immediately announced that they would be holding a short press conference and welcomed the reporters to ask questions. Blair was going to personally make this statement. Meanwhile, Lan Yu was sitting in her waiting room, swinging her legs lazily as she enjoyed a massage from her assistant. She had no idea she was going to be in big trouble. Accompanied by a series of snapping sounds, the reporters began to furiously take pictures of Blair on stage. They were surprised that was willing to get involved in the fight between Tongning and Lan Yu. "Mr. Blair, may I ask from what standpoint do you hold this briefing? And what is the reason for your unwavering support for Tongning? Is it because the two of you have made some sort of shady deal?" Hearing the reporter's question, Blair pointed to the person in front of him and said to his assistant, "Reporter, help me record this down. After this is over, send her a lawyer's letter." As soon as these words left his mouth, everyone in the room was shocked as they looked at each other in dismay. They had never imagined that from the start. Blair. So ruthless. Now, let me explain why I was chosen to hold this short briefing. Firstly, this incident was caused by A's event and has a grasp of the truth. Is it because netizens don't want to hear the truth, so if I speak the truth, I will be considered to have made an improper deal with someone else? As a well-known perfume company, has its own bottom line and principles. We have zero tolerance for people with bad intentions. Secondly, and also the most important reason why I have to step out. You all keep saying that Tongning doesn't like Lan Yu, but from what I see, no matter how much Lan Yu uses Tongning to create hype, she is magnanimous enough to forgive her. Because, she knows, Lan Yu is still young and hasn't developed a proper sense of right and wrong. If she does something wrong, she should be forgiven. Mr. Blair, even Tongning has admitted to giving Lan Yu a gift. How do you explain this? She admitted to giving him gifts because she really did give him gifts. But she refused to apologize because she didn't give him any gifts at all. As the victim, why should she apologize? Blair asked the reporter in a very fierce tone. How would you know? Tongning didn't give him any gifts at all. Gradually, the questioning reached its climax. Finally, they got to the main point. Everyone thought Blair was simply trying to do Lan Yu a favor. In reality, how could he possibly have any evidence? Everyone wanted to know what trick he had up his sleeve. However, Blair did not disappoint. Why? Because Tongning's gift was personally delivered by someone from EH. Neither Tongning nor her staff had a hand in it. The gift was retrieved from A's warehouse and the card was prepared by A's manager. Even the person who delivered the gift was an EH employee. Above all, from the photo that Lan Yu sent out, it's not hard to see that on the bottom right corner of the gift box was the EH logo. As for the handwriting on the card, it can be compared to our manager's handwriting. Most importantly, our agency has surveillance cameras. From the packaging and delivery of the gift, we can see everything. With this, do you still think Tongning has threatened Lan Yu? Let me tell you, the truth is, Tongning personally came to apologize and sincerely explained why she was absent. As a result, EH released a statement of reconciliation. At that time, your so-called Lan Yu was already going around crying about how Tongning refused to share a stage with her because she was unhappy that she was ostracizing her. However, even though Tongning was being slandered, she never retaliated against Lan Yu. She even gave Lan Yu the limited edition aromatherapy I gave her. She said she felt guilty for causing Lan Yu to misunderstand. That's why the gift was delivered by an EH employee. But, the most shocking thing is, Miss Lan Yu, did you take the gift away? You even deliberately swapped out the contents and used the public's psychology to create hype. You knew the netizens would help you, so you pushed Tongning into the abyss. It's fine for a small person to make mistakes, but to have such a vicious heart, it really makes one's hair stand on end. After saying that, Blair placed all the evidence on the big screen behind him, including some videos of the packaging process. Of course, Blair also invited a few people to come up and explain the whole process very clearly. No one could have imagined, the gift that Lan Yu had complained about, was actually not a gift from Tongning. It wasn't. It wasn't from Tongning. In fact, she didn't even touch it the entire time. So, Lan Yu's motive was obvious. She actually used a gift that wasn't from Tongning to accuse Tongning of threatening her. This was the biggest joke in the world. Did she have any shame? If she hadn't deliberately created hype, would EH have deliberately messed with her? Was there a need for EH to do this? Oh God. The internet was once again in an uproar. Who would have thought the situation had turned out this way? It was like a slap to the face. In that case, why hasn't Tongning stepped out to explain herself? Tongning sent a small gift out of goodwill to express her apology. Yet, she ended up being used by someone with ulterior motives. If EH hadn't been involved, how bad would Tongning have been slandered? She has no way of explaining herself. Plus, you bunch of ruthless people, as well as the netizens, would never give her a chance to explain herself. What do you guys think? The reporters were left speechless, their expressions were ugly. Chapter 125. A 16-year-old child already has such a sinister heart. A 16-year-old child already has the ability to manipulate the public. A 16-year-old child, simply because she is young, that's why she can do whatever she wants in the entertainment industry, causing one storm after another. Blair's words were sharper and more ruthless than the one before. His accusations made the reporters' faces turn red. They wanted to find a hole to hide in. I am not someone from the entertainment industry, nor do I understand how it works. But, regarding this gift, since EH is involved, I need to step out and clarify the situation. I can't allow an innocent person to be made a scapegoat. Miss Lan Yu, not only do I feel there is a problem with your personality, there is also a problem with your upbringing. This includes the agency that is covering up for you, using others' fame to gain popularity, stepping on others to get ahead and not knowing when to stop. They even want others to never reincarnate. Blair spoke agitatedly as he expressed his thoughts on the incident with Lan Yu. In the end, he completely let go. Since we've already reached this point, let me say one more thing. What little Tongning? Is Tongning a model from Star Age? What right does she have to promote your artist? She even sent herself to you to create hype for you. Otherwise, you would be saying that she is not magnanimous and is bullying the weak. Where are your morals? If you are such a saint, then why don't you add the word boy in front of your name and let others use it generously? When someone uses this name to engage in illegal activities, when someone uses it to steal and rob, how can you remain calm? How can you be happy? If you can't do it yourself, how can you expect Tongning to do it? Lan Yu is indeed only 16 years old, but is it right to commit murder and arson at the age of 16? When this incident first happened, I was shocked. How could there be such a bad person in this world? How could she distort the truth like this? What's more, she is only 16 years old. Everything I have said today represents the official views of EH. As long as EH works with them or any of their brands, the name Lan Yu will not be involved. I hereby announce that this name will forever be on A's blacklist. Besides, we only recognize one Tongning. There's no difference in seniority. Blair's words were extremely agitated, and each of his words was sonorous. It was as if he had been angered to the extreme and couldn't help but say those words. These were words that came from the heart. He used concrete evidence to slap Lan Yu in the face, slap Star Age in the face, slap the netizens in the face and mock the media in the audience. After Blair finished his speech, he bowed deeply to the media and ended the brief briefing. The group of reporters who were fanning the flames was suddenly at a loss. The truth was, Tongning did not threaten Lan Yu. Instead, Lan Yu used Tongning to create hype. Such an outcome caught everyone off guard. This was because Blair's slap was too fast and too urgent. Inside Star Age's waiting room, Lan Yu had no idea what had happened. She was still playing with the bottle of aromatherapy in her hands. Not long after, Star Age's artist's director threw open the door with a loud bang, grabbed Lan Yu and threw a resounding slap across the face. The model was hit. Lan Yu was hit. The staff outside the door all peeked their heads in, but they couldn't resist the director's fierce gaze. After being slapped, Lan Yu's eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. She held her cheek and asked, "What right do you have to hit me? Why did you hit me? Have a good look at this for yourself." After speaking, the artist's director threw his laptop at Lan Yu and told her to suffer the consequences herself. Lan Yu was confused as she picked up the laptop and looked at it. Blair had placed the evidence of EH all over the internet. As for the present she found, it turned out, it wasn't from Tongning, it was from EH. Yet, she actually used this present to create hype. Not to mention surpassing Tongning, even if you lived for another 100 years, you wouldn't be able to catch up. What did your manager say to you in the past? Weren't you arrogant and despotic? Look at you now, the agency will be buried with you. The artist's director's words were ruthless. This was because the internet was currently one-sided in condemning Star Age and Lan Yu. Tongning didn't even need to show her face and effortlessly sent Lan Yu into a hopeless situation. Was this really just a coincidence? Indeed, Tongning has withstood the test of time. This 16-year-old little bitch is too scheming. Previously, I even put in so many good words for her. Looking at this scheming Lan Yu, I can't help but sigh. I can't even compare to her in terms of shamelessness. These past 2 days, we have been attacking Tongning. Seeing how badly Tongning has been scolded, I suddenly feel guilty. Tongning, I'm sorry, we all want to apologize to you. Harais, what little Tongning? I'm so disappointed. Tongning, I'm sorry. Tongning, it's all our fault. It turns out you were the victim. The evidence had been revealed, Lan Yu's face had been slapped swollen and the netizens had stepped out to apologize. But Lan Yu did not make a single move. Only now did she know fear. At this time she fell to the cold ground, not knowing what to do. The internet was filled with scolding. The words used were extremely harsh, even worse than the scolding towards Tongning. Even an adult like Tongning couldn't tolerate it, let alone a 16-year-old child. But no one pitied her and no one pitied her. Because she deserved it, she reaped what she sowed. In the spacious waiting room, there was only Lan Yu and her assistant. Lan Yu suddenly turned her head and asked her assistant angrily, "You were the one that posted the photos, I had nothing to do with it." As soon as the assistant heard this, he was shocked. He could tell that Lan Yu wanted him to take the blame. With a cold snort, the assistant threw his handbag to the ground. "I resign." After speaking, Lan Yu's assistant left Star Age. However, just as he stepped out of the door, he saw a white Mercedes-Benz drive over. Sitting inside was a handsome man. "Get in." "You are." "I am Tongning's manager. My surname is An." Lan Yu's assistant didn't understand the man's intentions. But, thinking about Lan Yu's actions, he couldn't help but feel angry. So, he pulled open An Zihao's car door and the two disappeared from the entrance of Star Age. Why are you looking for me?" "I'm here to help you," An Zihao said as he drove. "Because I know, from now on, Star Age will be using you as a scapegoat. This is the unchanging rule of the entertainment industry. Is it a pity to sacrifice an artist or an unknown manager?" Chapter 126. The assistant's eyes grew wide. Before you're destroyed, you have to take the initiative to speak up and prove your innocence. If Lan Yu hadn't spoken up, the assistant may not have believed in Zihao's words. But Lan Yu obviously had the intention to make him a scapegoat. Doesn't Tongning not have a manager? It's not that she doesn't have one, she simply doesn't lack one. And Zihao laughed in self-ridicule. They were both faced with scandals. Back then, he and Yun Xin had a huge argument that ended with one dead and one injured. But he never expected Tongning to counterattack so beautifully. All she did was say one sentence and without even showing her face, she successfully turned the tables and suppressed Lan Yu once again. This woman was indeed amazing. So, what he needed to do now was to return what he owed her. If I step out and speak up, what will I get out of it? Firstly, do you want to take the blame for Lan Yu? Do you want to end up in a situation where everyone wants to beat you up? Secondly, as long as you step out and speak up, I can help you leave Star Age and arrange a job for you at Chengtian, and Zihao handed his business card to his assistant to prove his identity. The assistant was surprised. Afterwards, she seemed to have made a huge decision. "I am willing to step out." Meanwhile, 6 p.m. that same day, on Mo Ting's desk was the information that Lu Che had sent someone to investigate. Inside the information, there was a detailed record of Lan Yu's school life. "President, this Lan Yu is not easy to deal with. She has always been a bully at school. When she was 14 years old, she was expelled for hitting a classmate. Afterwards, she transferred to Beijing and is known as a problem student. How could an underage girl like this dare to bully Tongning?" Mo Ting's gaze was deep and sharp. He simply glanced at the information and handed it back to Lu Che. "Arrange for her to be exposed." "I understand. But, President, have a look at this." After speaking, Lu Che handed the information to Mo Ting. It turned out, Lan Yu's manager had stepped out and publicly admitted that Lan Yu had swapped gifts to frame Tongning. If Blair's evidence wasn't strong enough, then this statement completely tore apart Lan Yu's mask of hypocrisy. Someone was helping Tongning behind the scenes. Mo Ting immediately caught onto this information. Afterwards, Mo Ting guessed it was most likely the manager that Lan Shi had appointed for Tongning, An Zihao. Once upon a time, An Zihao was able to call the wind and summon the rain in Chengtian. His abilities were outstanding, but now, he was no longer in his prime. Plus, his abilities were questionable. "Don't worry about it. Are you really not afraid that after he becomes Madam's manager, he will become a threat to you?" Mo Ting smirked before asking, "How is he a threat to me?" Not to mention the difference in status between the two, Mo Ting firmly believed that between him and Tongning, there was no room for anyone else. After all, Tongning wasn't that type of person. After signing the documents in his hands, Mo Ting got up to head home. However, at this moment, his secretary suddenly knocked on the door and rushed in. She said anxiously to Mo Ting, "President, something bad has happened. 2 international superstars had been injured in an explosion in the US. The news had already spread like wildfire. The producers were blaming Hai Rui's actors for not handling the situation properly and wanted them to take full responsibility. Originally, Mo Ting wouldn't have needed to personally deal with a matter like this. But the project was one of Hai Rui's key projects for the next half of the year, and the person pulling the strings was his American friend. So, it was only right for him to personally deal with it. "President, do you want to book a plane ticket right away?" Mo Ting gestured for him to keep quiet before he gave Tongning a phone call. "Ning. Huh." Tongning responded in a soft voice. "Why aren't you home yet? It's already so late." "I don't think I can go home. I need to fly to the US immediately. Something urgent came up," Mo Ting explained. "Is it serious? You need to leave immediately?" Tongning suddenly woke up as she sat up from the sofa. "It's a small matter. I just need to be there. I'm worried about you. In that case, I'll help you find your passport and pack some clothes." Tongning did not say a word. She simply stood up and returned to her room to help Mo Ting pack his luggage. Half an hour later, she arrived at Hai Rui and Mo Ting personally came down to welcome her. "I don't have time, I need to go to the airport immediately." Seeing Mo Ting was in a rush, Tongning quickly grabbed onto his arm. "Since you're worried about me, why haven't you thought of packing me up?" Tongning waved the luggage in her hand. "I'll go with you." Mo Ting glanced at Tongning as he pulled open his coat and wrapped her in it. The couple boarded the car together. "What if you have a job? Don't you know better than me whether I have a job or not?" Tongning laughed. He was obviously the one handling her work email. Although she had signed with Cheng Tian, it hadn't been announced to the public yet. So, she still had a few days of free time. Plus, didn't we agree that no matter what happens, we should travel together as husband and wife? Keeping you by my side is what I want to do right now. Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply intertwined his fingers with Tongning's. Although it wasn't a big deal, by bringing Tongning along, he wouldn't have to worry about her current situation in the country. So, it would be easier for him to handle things. Seeing Mo Ting's handsome face soften, Tongning couldn't help but smile. She knew she had made the right decision. She didn't want to miss out on an important opportunity to be by Mo Ting's side. However, before the couple boarded the plane, Lan Shi gave Tongning a phone call. She was concerned about the aftermath of Lan Yu's incident and asked her to return to the agency the next day to discuss the public signing of the contract. However, Tongning rejected every single one of her requests. "President Lan, I won't be in the country for the next 2 days. If there's anything, can you wait until I return?" After hearing Tongning's words, Lan Shi did not reject. "Perfect, you can relax a little. I originally had an important show planned for you to appear on." Mo Ting overheard their conversation and lowered his head to look into Tongning's eyes. But Tongning's attitude was firm. "If I miss this show, there's always the next one." But there was only one person. If she missed it, it would be gone forever. "Okay, I won't force you for now. But, have you heard about Zihao helping you?" Lan Shi was relieved. It turned out, there was still someone that could stir up Zihao's frozen heart. "I don't know," Tongning replied straightforwardly. "In that case, we'll talk about it when we get back. You should relax first." After hanging up the phone in exhaustion, Tongning hung up the phone and turned it off. "Mrs. Mo, you are too stubborn," Mo Ting laughed. "Mr. Mo, I simply don't want you to think that there's no difference between having a wife and not having a wife. As long as I can accompany you, I will not be absent. Even if I have to go to hell, so what?" Chapter 127. Mo Ting gently stroked Tongning's hair and pulled her into his embrace in the most intimate way possible. Especially after hearing Tongning's confession, Mo Ting wished he could give her the most beautiful thing in the world, even if it was his heart, and place it in her hands. Although we are in the US, the Oriental trend has yet to die down. If you follow me like this, it will attract too much attention. So, a hint of disappointment suddenly flashed across Tongning's eyes. "I don't mind having a beautiful translator by my side." Mo Ting let out a gentle laugh. His voice was deep and sexy. "Letting you come into contact with Hollywood in advance is a good thing. It's not easy to get on the negotiating table overseas. Aren't you afraid I'll come into contact with Hai Rui's secrets? Tongning relaxed as she asked. I am already yours, so what about Hai Rui? Mo Ting didn't care. If you want to support your family, I don't mind stepping back behind the scenes and cooking for you. In your dreams, just focus on earning money, President Mo. Don't even think about slacking off. Mo Ting let out a laugh. He suddenly felt that with Tongning by his side, the boring journey in the past had become interesting and no longer boring. Tongning was an ambitious person, but she never brought her ambitions home because she was well aware of her identity. The entertainment gossip in Beijing was still hyping up the Lan Yu incident. After being slapped in the face by and her assistant being exposed, Lan Yu could no longer withstand the bombardment of public opinion and directly recorded an apology video. A 16-year-old child appeared in front of the camera in a disheveled manner, crying her eyes red as she begged for forgiveness from the public. She even hired a group of internet trolls to help her clear her name. It seemed she still wanted to make a comeback. She went to have a private chat with Zihao. She wanted to know how he planned to handle the situation and what he thought of Tongning. Zihao held onto his laptop. He had already cleaned up his appearance from when he first returned to China. He finally looked like a top manager. We can't let Lan Yu go. Zihao looked down at his laptop. Otherwise, there will be more big Tongning, middle Tongning, little Tongning, and so on. There will be no end to it. Does that mean you've decided to become Tongning's manager? She was overjoyed. Zihao lifted his head and played with the pen in his hand, as long as she's willing. I admit that I did look at her a little arrogant at first, but I can't deny that she's a very interesting person. I believe in your abilities. She nodded her head. However, Tongning is a wild horse that is hard to tame. In a way, she is just like you. So, I think the two of you will work well together. I will communicate with her. By the way, when will you take back the position of artists director? She raised her eyebrows and asked. Between Yongjing, Luo Hao and Zihao, she actually trusted Zihao more. Especially Yongjing and Luo Hao, they both had different degrees of disrespect towards her, the CEO. So, she hoped Zihao could reclaim his position. I'm not interested in that. I simply want to be Tongning's manager. Of course, if someone tries to go against me, I won't hold back. After speaking, Zihao turned off his laptop with a cold glint in his eyes. Did you know that during today's meeting, Yongjing suggested signing Lan Yu to the agency? She laughed as she shook her head. President Lan, it's time to show your sword. The contract signing ceremony will be held in 3 days. Hurry and deal with Lan Yu's matter. Also, arrange a time with Tongning. Of course, if you fail to bring Tongning back, I will announce that you have returned to Chengtian and suppress Tongning's matter for a while. Zihao nodded his head. She had always thought things through carefully. Afterwards, Zihao left She's office. However, on the way back, he ran into Yongjing. Their eyes met as Yongjing said to Zihao, back then, I really didn't mean to expose the incident to the media. Zihao lifted his head with a cold expression. Yongjing, Zihao is back. So, I will no longer give you a chance to hurt me, nor will I give you a chance to hurt my artist. Yongjing's expression changed as she tightened her grip on the artist's information in her hands. Once upon a time, we were such good friends. Shush. Don't say it out loud. It's disgusting. After speaking, Zihao left the office, leaving Yongjing behind with her fists tightly clenched. Just you wait and see. Artist. Zihao, with your current resources, how many years do you think it will take to train a famous artist? Yongjing sneered in her heart. But, she had no idea, her proud mask would soon be torn to shreds. Meanwhile, Tongning had just arrived in the US. Not long after she checked into the hotel, Mo Ting sent over some tools to disguise herself. Tongning immediately put on a wig and sunglasses. She was dressed very formally and professionally. At first glance, it was obvious she had retracted her model aura and had transformed into a translator. The two did not even have time to rest as they headed straight for the hospital where the actors from Hai Rui were staying. Because of Mo Ting and Lu Che's cover, Tongning's identity was not discovered by anyone. The actors were a man and a woman. The woman was considered a top actress. Because of the explosion, both of them had different degrees of injuries and would need a long time to recover. However, the production crew refused to admit that they were responsible for the accident and placed the blame on the actors. They even demanded compensation from Hai Rui. The only reason Mo Ting had to make an appearance was because he was worried about a friend who was stuck in the middle. Otherwise, according to Mo Ting's temper, he would have filed an appeal. Hai Rui's legal team had never lost a lawsuit before. President, I've already made contact with the producers. They've agreed to meet tomorrow morning, Lu Che said as he walked. In that case, let's play with them, Mo Ting replied calmly. By the way, Mr. Asa has already made a reservation at the restaurant. He is just waiting for us to arrive. Let's go then, Mo Ting replied as he held onto Tongning's right hand at a place where no one could see. Tongning was a little surprised. She thought this man would forget about her existence when he got busy. But, in reality, he had not forgotten to place his gaze on her. At this moment, the two were on their way to meet Mo Ting's friend from the US. He was a mixed-blood child and was the same age as Mo Ting. However, he had an unrestrained personality and was a bit of a playboy. Of course, this type of person was also good at getting things done, so the film and television company he established was quite famous. However, he loved beautiful women. Especially when he saw someone with long legs like Tongning. As soon as he saw Tongning enter the restaurant, he became excited. He did not even bother to discuss business as he directly asked Mo Ting, "Is this your secretary?" As soon as Mo Ting saw his gaze, his expression darkened. "You better move your eyes away from her." "What? Is she your partner in bed?" Before Mo Ting could respond, Tongning interrupted, "Yes, she is my partner in bed. But, it is for life." "Mistress?" Mo Ting wrapped his arm around Tongning and declared his ownership, "Wife. So, move your frivolous eyes away. What kind of wife is she? The kind of marriage? Don't tell me you want to fall out with me because of her." Mo Ting was a little surprised as he shook his head. "That's not necessary. But, I can risk my life with you." Chapter 128. Hearing Mo Ting's words, the man immediately understood Tongning's position in Mo Ting's heart. He no longer joked around, "So, it's true love." After speaking, Asa stood up and extended his hand formally to shake Tongning's hand. "Sorry, I went overboard a moment ago. I thought, no matter what, it was all a misunderstanding." After all, the entertainment industry was a big place and Mo Ting was the owner of an empire. Normally, people like him would be surrounded by beauties. Who would have thought he would directly get married? Tongning leaned into Mo Ting's embrace and gently shook the man's hand. She did not say a word, she simply nodded her head. "But, sister-in-law, why do you look so familiar to me?" Asa scanned Tongning up and down, but he did not dare to act rashly again. He knew when to play games and when to be serious. This was a woman that Mo Ting risked his life for, so she was someone that he had to keep his distance from. "Let's get down to business." Mo Ting pulled out a chair for Tongning to sit down as he directed Asa to get to the point. Tongning wanted to laugh at his childishness, but at the same time, her heart warmed up. The shoot this time took place halfway up a mountain and the incident happened too suddenly, so it's hard to determine who was right and who was wrong. Ting, of course, I trust Hai Rui's actors more. Originally, the incident wasn't so complicated, but the investor behind Deadly suddenly pulled out of their investment, causing the production budget to be tight. That's why they turned their attention to Hai Rui. This incident was all my fault. I caused you to lose two of your best actors. This explosion will definitely have a huge impact on their careers. Who cares about that bit of money? But, these two actors were international actors that Hai Rui spent 4 years training. What a shame. Falling from the top was like falling from the sky. Their careers were bound to suffer a huge setback. If it was another agency, these two actors would have been fine. But, the CEO of Hai Rui is you, Asa smiled meaningfully. Asa smiled meaningfully. I invited you here today to make my stand clear. I'll leave everything up to you. I don't have any relations with the producers anymore. Mo Ting did not say a word, but his gaze was sharp. I finally remember who sister-in-law is. Isn't she the Asian model that was a hit in the US a few days ago? Asa suddenly remembered. He then asked teasingly, sister-in-law, since you are a model, you must be very busy with work. Why are you running around with Ting? Could it be that you're worried about him and are afraid that he'll act recklessly? She simply turned her head and asked Mo Ting, do you have the guts to do it? Mo Ting shook his head and replied quickly, I wouldn't dare. After Asa heard this, he was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter, so there are times when Big Boss is being controlled. The group chatted for a little while longer. Asa had something urgent to attend to, so he decided to leave early. However, before he left, he was warned by Mo Ting, my marriage with Tongning, keep it a secret. Okay. The other party made a good gesture and then left the hotel in a hurry. Tongning listened to their conversation from start to finish. Her heart felt a little uncomfortable. Mo Ting realized she hadn't said a word, so he immediately held onto her hand. What's wrong? Normally, I see you signing countless documents and attending countless meetings. Only now do I realize, what I see is only on the surface. Is there anything I can help you with? Mo Ting looked into Tongning's eyes and realized she was genuinely worried, so he explained, I can't remember how many years it's been. I've already gotten used to it. This is how the entertainment industry is. The more you control, the more you lose. So, you must always be by my side. Tongning did not say anything. She simply held onto Mo Ting's hand tightly and pulled him up. Let's go back to the hotel and have a bath. Don't we have a tough battle tomorrow? After returning to the hotel and having a bath, the couple lay in bed. Tongning originally wanted Mo Ting to get some rest, but Mo Ting pulled out his laptop and looked at her work email. Can't you focus on Hai Rui's matters while you're in the US? And Zihao sent you an email. Mo Ting opened the email and showed it to Tongning. Mo Ting opened the email and showed it to Tongning. The exposure of Lan Yu's assistant was in Zihao's doing. He is indeed capable. Plus, based on the schedule he has planned for you, he is also one of my top choices. Apart from personal reasons, based on his abilities, even if he were to work at Hai Rui, he would still be able to hold his own. Okay, I agree, Tongning nodded. So straightforward? Didn't you say that the things he considers are also your top choices? I trust you. Tongning actually hoped Mo Ting would be a little less worried. But, and Zihao, I want you to return tomorrow. Lan she has already prepared to announce that you have signed with Cheng Tian. Mo Ting closed his laptop and wrapped his arm around Tongning as they lay down. Let's go home. Hearing these words, Tongning did not respond. She simply pulled up the blanket. Cheng Tian's contract signing ceremony is very important to you. Of course, I want you to accompany me, but I don't want you to sacrifice your career. Listen to me, it wasn't easy for you to get to where you are today. Tongning was speechless. She felt a little disappointed. Deep down, she knew, with her current status, she did not have the right to stand by Mo Ting's side 24/7. Just 2 days. Tongning remained silent. Under the blanket, she hugged Mo Ting tightly. In an unprecedented move, she flipped over and pressed her body onto Mo Ting's as she leaned over and kissed him on the lips. Mo Ting felt a little helpless as he allowed her to forcefully kiss him. When a couple was passionately in love, even a minute apart felt like an eternity. This time, the exercise was a little intense. Tongning directly fell asleep. All she could feel was someone cleaning her body and helping her change into a fresh set of clothes. The next morning, Mo Ting drove Tongning to the airport. No matter what happens, give me a phone call as soon as possible. Tongning wrapped her arms around Mo Ting and kissed him deeply before putting on her face mask and sunglasses and getting out of the car. As a couple, staying together was a problem, but wasn't separation also a problem? Tongning resisted the urge to walk home and the urge to make a phone call. She sat in the departure lounge and opened up her phone to browse through the Beijing news. However, Mo Ting still sent her a message, "Don't look at your phone like that, it hurts your eyes." Tongning's heart skipped a beat as she quickly lifted her head and looked around for Mo Ting. However, this time, he had already left the airport. While waiting for her flight, Tongning kept a low profile to avoid the crowds. But someone still recognized her. It was a tall and skinny man. After boarding the plane, he approached Tongning and handed her a business card. "Hello, Miss Tongning. I am a reporter from Hua Rong Studio." As soon as Tongning saw the man, she politely accepted the business card. "Hello. Just now, I saw you step out of a black car. The man that drove you to the airport must be your boyfriend, right?" As soon as Tongning heard this, she was a little surprised. Had she been photographed? "Don't worry, Miss Tongning, I didn't capture anything. I just happened to see it. Even if I wanted to, it would have been too late." Chapter 129. Tongning looked deeply into the man's eyes and regained her composure as she smiled. "I don't have a boyfriend. All she had was a husband." Seeing Tongning deny it, the man did not force her any further. But the sharp glint in his eyes made Tongning feel uncomfortable. She had a feeling this man would definitely have his eyes on her in the future. Lan Yu's incident has caused such a commotion. It seems Miss Tongning has not been affected in the slightest. Tongning smiled. Obviously, she did not want to chat with the man. This was her way of keeping a distance from others. The man could tell that Tongning had no intention of continuing the conversation, so he smiled and returned to his seat. Tongning did not think the man had seen through Mo Ting. Otherwise, he would not have spoken in this way. Most importantly, there was no way he didn't know the consequences of offending Hai Rui. The reporter was sitting diagonally above Tongning. Before he put on his eye bags, he had a mocking smile on his face. Although he didn't see who the man was, he knew it wasn't as simple as Tongning saying she didn't have a boyfriend. All along, it had been difficult to dig up dirt on Tongning because she was careful. But when someone like her was found to have a problem, it would not be a small news. So, he was determined to follow up on Tongning's scandals. This time, he was really lucky. She was so aloof, yet in the end, she was still involved with a man. Tongning felt uneasy. As soon as she stepped off the plane, she immediately sent Mo Ting a message. "Ting, we've been discovered at the airport. A paparazzo from the agency saw me getting out of your car. I'm not sure how much he saw, but I can tell he's up to no good." Mo Ting had just stepped out of the bathroom. As soon as he saw Tongning's message, he furrowed his brows. "Don't worry and prepare to sign the contract. I'll handle it. When can you come back?" "I'm not sure yet." Seeing the word "not sure," Tongning wanted to reply with "I miss you," but she was afraid Mo Ting would be distracted, so she changed it to "I'll wait for you." As soon as Long Jie picked up Tongning, she noticed she wasn't in a good mood. She immediately guessed it was because of her separation from Mo Ting. "I saw the news about Hai Rui. Is Big Boss okay?" Tongning nodded. As Long Jie drove, she looked at Tongning through the rearview mirror. Her tone was a little complicated. "Tongning, haven't you realized you've fallen too deep? Even when you were with Han Yufan, you were never so absent-minded. Most importantly, this isn't a big deal. It's just a few days apart from Big Boss." Tongning was stunned for a moment before she nodded her head and admitted, "I may have fallen in love with Mo Ting. That's your husband. It's your right to love him. What about him? Where's the Big Boss? You and Big Boss haven't been together for long enough and haven't experienced enough things together. But, Tongning, ask yourself, if Big Boss is like Han Yufan and betrays you for a second time, would you be able to handle it?" Long Jie observed Tongning's expression and noticed Long Jie still lacked a sense of security despite Mo Ting's meticulous care. Tongning was silent for a moment. Thinking about the time she had spent with Mo Ting, she suddenly regained her confidence. "I am no longer the Tongning from before. There is no way I can't tell the second Han Yufan apart. This time, I believe in the person I've chosen. No matter what, I will follow him to the end. Plus, Long Jie, you need to be prepared. On the way to the airport, Mo Ting might bump into the paparazzi. What do you think?" Long Jie was so scared that she stepped on the brakes. "Even if my relationship with Mo Ting is to be exposed, it needs to be within my control. Let's wait and see." Tongning replied in seriousness. "In that case, get ready to attend Cheng Tian's contract signing ceremony. I will drive you to see President Lan." Tongning nodded her head as Long Jie played the entertainment news in the car. The rumors surrounding Hai Rui's actors had already shifted the public's attention away from Lan Yu. This Lan Yu sure has a bit of luck. This was because the trump card in Mo Ting's hand had yet to be revealed. Seeing Tang Ning remain silent, Long Jie could tell she was still worried about Mo Ting. So, she switched to a gentler tune, "You won't be able to help. Plus, Big Boss will handle everything. Hai Rui is so big, are you afraid Big Boss will tire himself out?" Tang Ning pursed her lips. When you care about someone, no matter how capable they are, they will still be your concern. Long Jie choked and did not say another word. It didn't take long before the couple arrived at Lan Shi's home along with An Zihao. This was the first time Tang Ning and An Zihao had truly met. Yet, An Zihao had already caused her so much trouble in the past and helped her clean up the mess. Seeing An Zihao's expression, Long Jie could tell he wasn't in a good mood. But Tang Ning remained calm and aloof. "Because your contract signing needs to be kept a secret, we decided to meet at home. You don't mind, do you?" Lan Shi handed Tang Ning a cup of coffee. "But, regarding Zihao, I want to know your opinion." "I agree," Tang Ning replied calmly. "But, I have one condition, don't get involved in my private life." And Zihao lifted his head from the sofa and looked at Tang Ning. He realized this 26-year-old female model had a frightening level of self-control. She managed her emotions very well. So, he smiled and walked over to Tang Ning, extending his hand. "It's been a pleasure working with you. I hope you won't make a mistake like what happened with again." Hearing this, An Zihao's smile became even more natural as he pointed to his temple and promised, "Don't worry, I can guarantee it with my head." "Tang Ning, after you join Cheng Tian, the competition will no longer be the same as before. Yongjing and Luo Hao each have a few top models with them. Competition for resources is unavoidable. That is my problem. President Lan doesn't need to worry about it," and Zihao replied. Lan Shi raised an eyebrow. "Do you think you can compete with them?" "You can try. Okay, I will prepare a grand signing ceremony for you. When the time comes, you can personally announce the news of Tang Ning's signing." Lan Shi was currently being controlled by Yongjing and Luo Hao, so she needed An Zihao and Tang Ning to hold her back. From now on, she would have to face Yongjing and Luo Hao head-on. "By the way, Tang Ning, you don't have any relationship problems right now, right?" Lan Shi suddenly asked. Things like this usually needed to be reported to the management agency in case something unexpected happened and something uncontrollable happened. Tang Ning's gaze suddenly became complicated, but she didn't hide it. "Yes." Lan Shi froze for a moment. She realized she didn't understand Tang Ning well enough. What if it gets exposed? "Tang Ning, you've already missed your golden opportunity. You can't have any more scandals. The contract does not restrict my right to date. Plus, he and I are not just in a relationship, he is my family and relative and lover. You should consider logging off and letting him go." Lan Shi relaxed a little. "Zihao, you need to keep this a secret." Chapter 130. Tang Ning's eyes lit up like a torch, but she did not respond. And Zihao's expression was a little complicated, but he still nodded his head. "I will do what I need to do. Tang Ning, I won't force you. But, you need to think about it carefully." "There's no need to think about it. If it gets exposed, I will take full responsibility." "We can't part ways," Tang Ning replied in a serious tone. Her tone was firm and unquestionable. Lan Shi looked at Tang Ning thoughtfully and smiled. Then, "Relax a little. By the way, have you seen the news about Hai Rui?" Lan Shi picked up a glass of red wine and poured them a glass at the same time. Two international superstars. For Hai Rui, this is a big loss. Hearing the words Hai Rui, Tang Ning's expression darkened. But, she simply clinked glasses with Lan Shi without saying a word. "Tang Ning, be honest, have you ever considered going to Hai Rui?" Long Jie stood to one side, wanting to laugh but not daring to. Did Tang Ning really need to go? After all, she was the wife of Hai Rui's CEO. She already had half of Mo Ting's shares. Hai Rui isn't a place I can go whenever I want. Tang Ning knew how strict Mo Ting's management was. For Hai Rui, models like her were everywhere, they weren't even worth mentioning. I actually want to go to Hai Rui. I want the position of the wife of the CEO, Lan, she laughed. But, in reality, her words were 30% joking and 70% sincere. However, Mo Ting was too hard to get close to, he didn't give any woman a chance. Of course, there was no chance. Mo Ting's official wife was right in front of him. Tongning glanced at Long Jie, gesturing for her not to show off too much. Long Jie stuck out her tongue at Tongning unwillingly. After meeting with Lan Shi, and Zihao was ordered to drive Tongning home. Where are you staying? Hyatt Regency, Tongning replied. Seeing An Zihao start the car, she added, don't forget what you promised me, you won't interfere with my private life. Don't be so cautious. An Zihao was a little helpless. Since I promised, I will definitely do it. It's just, Yongjing and Luo Hao aren't easy to deal with. I just need to be mentally prepared. Those two have already set up a lot of traps for Tongning. But, they've never succeeded, Long Jie scoffed. Do they think Tongning is easy to bully? This was what An Zihao admired about Tongning. Even when she was surrounded by Yongjing and Luo Hao, she didn't lose out. In fact, her popularity continued to grow. They owe me a lot too. Tongning had heard about An Zihao and Yun Xin's story from the side. She also knew that An Zihao used to have a good relationship with Yongjing. As for the grudge between them, only they knew. Prepare for the signing ceremony. Tongning nodded her head. Of course she had to be prepared. Yongjing had been arrogant in front of her more than once, so she wasn't going to let her off easily. There was also Luo Hao. Naturally, she would not let that hypocrite off the hook for the trouble she had caused at the charity night and the various traps she had secretly set for her. After returning home and looking at the empty living room, Tongning originally wanted to give Mo Ting a phone call. But, remembering it was still 2 a.m., she didn't have the heart to do so. In the end, Mo Ting sent her a message first. Are you home? Tongning's heart suddenly lit up as she quickly replied, Did Long Jie tell you? I was worried, so I told Long Jie to keep me updated. Tongning smiled as she held onto her phone. She then gave Mo Ting a phone call. I saw the news about Hai Rui. How are things going? It's been resolved, Mo Ting replied casually. When will you be back? I still need to see a few people. Mo Ting's voice carried a sense of tiredness. I miss you. Tongning was stunned for a moment. In the end, she gathered her courage and said in a serious tone. As soon as Mo Ting heard the words I miss you, his body involuntarily sat up in bed. He wanted to immediately pull Tongning into his embrace. Not only did he want to, he immediately did so. He asked Lu Che to book the plane tickets and handed everything over to AAS. Mo Ting's style had always been swift and decisive. After evaluating the value of Deadly, he immediately negotiated with Acer and became their backer, taking control of the production. Afterwards, he immediately replaced all the staff involved in the production and sent out a letter from his lawyer, demanding they compensate for the damages and injuries caused to the actors. After a busy day, the first thing Mo Ting did when he finally had some free time was to receive a phone call from Long Jie. Long Jie said straightforwardly, Big boss, you are making our Tongning very upset. Huh? Mo Ting obviously didn't understand what she meant. Did you know that when Tongning returned home today, she was completely distracted? I asked her if she was afraid of your second betrayal. Guess what she said? On the other side of the phone, Long Jie was extremely pleased. After all, it wasn't easy to tease the big boss. What did she say? You can ask her yourself, Long Jie giggled as she hung up the phone. Mo Ting's lips curved upwards helplessly. Tongning's assistant really needed to be taught a lesson. In reality, wasn't he also a little upset? Especially when Tongning wasn't by his side. So, he picked up his phone and sent Tongning a message, I will never hurt you. So, can you tell me what you said to Long Jie? Seeing the message, Tongning didn't quite understand. But, thinking about the phrase I'm in love with Mo Ting, her face turned red. No. I think we are thinking the same thing. Mo Ting deliberately set Tongning up. What are you thinking about? I'll tell you when I get back. I may have to stay here for another week. Tongning's curiosity was piqued. However, when she thought about how she would only be able to see Mo Ting for a few more days, she felt a little disappointed. Mo Ting did not explain as he gently coaxed her to sleep. Tong Ning was truly tired. As she hugged Mo Ting's pillow, her breathing gradually returned to normal. The next morning, Zihao went to pick Tong Ning up. She had accepted a shoot for the November cover of a top-tier magazine. However, just as she arrived downstairs, she heard the door open. Tong Ning held her breath as she saw Mo Ting appear in the doorway. Her entire body froze. She felt like she was dreaming. Mo Ting put down his luggage and opened his arms towards her. Tong Ning immediately pounced over and wrapped her arms tightly around Mo Ting's waist. "I miss you, I like you, I may even love you," Mo Ting said as he kissed Tong Ning on the forehead. Hearing Mo Ting's confession, Tong Ning was stunned. "I told you, I'll tell you when I get back." Tong Ning's eyes turned red as she left Mo Ting's embrace. Even when she was betrayed by Han Yufan, she had never felt this emotional. "Tong Ning, I will only say this once. From now on, I will use my actions to prove it. Let's use our kiss as proof. As long as you can feel my love, kiss me and give me a response." Tong Ning lowered her head in thought for a moment before lifting her head. She hooked her arms around Mo Ting's neck and gave him a passionate kiss. Chapter 131. As soon as Mo Ting returned, Tong Ning completely let go of her worries. The couple hugged each other for a long time until Zihao called to rush them home. "Go ahead, I need to freshen up a bit before heading to the office," Mo Ting said gently. Tong Ning nodded her head. All the worry and fear in her heart had been swept away. Before Mo Ting, she had already been with Han Yufan for a few years. But she had never felt this way before. It was like her heart was tied to Mo Ting's. As soon as something happened to Mo Ting, she would feel pain from the pain. Thinking Zihao was still waiting for her, Tong Ning left Mo Ting's embrace and left. Outside Hyatt Regency, Zihao was sitting in a van waiting for Tong Ning. She was now a signed model of Cheng Tian, so they gave her the treatment and respect she deserved. Seeing Tong Ning appear, Zihao immediately escorted her into the car. Just as they were about to close the car door, Zihao suddenly said to Tong Ning, "Tong Ning, are you aware that your goal is to become the top supermodel? If you knew this, you would grab hold of the last opportunity and work non-stop instead of indulging in love. Don't you understand that this is a ticking time bomb? I'm not trying to interfere with your private life. I simply want to remind you, if you are discovered, then everything you've done before will be for nothing." Tong Ning understood Zihao's worries. After all, she had experienced the feeling of falling into hell before. But she wasn't Yun Xin and Mo Ting wasn't Zihao. There are a lot of models overseas that are married and have children, yet they still walk the runway. That would depend on how capable the man you are hiding is. Zihao replied straightforwardly. "Of course, if you don't think there's anything to worry about, then pretend I never said anything." Tong Ning closed her eyes in deep thought. After quite some time, she finally said in seriousness, "I am climbing so hard because of him. Did you think I would stay away from him for the sake of becoming a supermodel? For the sake of being a supermodel, I can give up on other things. But, for him, I will never give up." Zihao understood what Tong Ning meant. He suddenly thought back to the time he and Yun Xin were together. He was framed by Yong Jing and Luo Hao. They exposed his relationship with Yun Xin to the media, but Yun Xin misunderstood and thought he was the one who revealed their relationship. The argument and car accident was something he would never forget for the rest of his life. The atmosphere was a little awkward. To ease the tension, Zihao coughed twice and changed the topic. "In a bit, we'll be meeting with her Vision's chief editor. I've already made a verbal agreement with them to put you on the cover of their October issue. This is very important to you because you currently lack recognition, which means that you haven't made it to the A-list yet. So, we need her Vision's help to stand on the A-list." With the mention of work, Tong Ning nodded her head. "I will be highly cooperative. Right now, you need to be aware of who your competitors are at Cheng Tian. Yong Jing has 2 and Luo Hao has 3. Of course, the ones that can truly threaten you are 1 each. But, you need to know, these 2 people are quite despicable when it comes to snatching resources. I've seen it. Tongning chuckled. Who knows, Yongjing might also be taking resources from her vision. And Zihao was simply guessing. He never imagined he would actually come across a situation like this. Just as they arrived at the agency, they happened to see Yongjing and one of her models walking out together. And Zihao sneered as he asked Tongning to stay in the car. He then stepped out and stopped Yongjing. Did you bring a model for an interview? I don't need an interview. Her Vision's chief editor is a good friend of mine. So, I'm just here to go through the motions. What? You're also here for an interview? But President Lan didn't tell you to bring any models. It seems, over the years, you've managed to expand your resources quite a bit. Yang Jing's expression froze like she had been poked in a sore spot. You used me to climb up the ladder and took away my work notes. It seems you're quite good at it. I don't know what you're talking about. After speaking, Yang Jing turned to leave with her model. However, Zihao grabbed onto her arm. If you're despicable, the heavens will deal with you. Yang Jing looked at Zihao with a complicated expression. She then freed herself from his grip and left with her model. Afterwards, Zihao returned to the van and said to Tongning, "Get out, we still need to go for an interview. If Yongjing has already taken away the November front cover, then we'll do whatever it takes to get it back." And Zihao suddenly laughed. Those two bitches owe me too much. So, it's not too much for me to take some back. Tongning did not say anything as she watched Yongjing drive away in her sports car. If she wasn't mistaken, the person sitting behind Yongjing was Lan Yu. Over the past few days, because of the news about Hai Rui, Lan Yu's popularity had been suppressed. But what was Yang Jing's motive for looking for Lan Yu? Lan Yu is in Yang Jing's car. And Zihao lifted his head and looked at Tongning with the same deep gaze. I suspect, based on Yang Jing's ambition, she wants to establish her own agency. If she can pull Lan Yu into her camp now, she will definitely be useful in the future. After all, your status is constantly rising and Lan Yu looks like you. She still has a chance to make a comeback. Lan Yu, it's time to go to hell. Tongning glanced at Zihao but did not say a word. The two entered her Vision's office one after another to make an appointment with the editor's secretary. The secretary scanned Zihao from head to toe before saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. N. The editor had something urgent to attend to and has already flown to France." "Is that what your editor told you?" The secretary was a little embarrassed, but she did not deny it. "In that case, before we came up, did your editor receive a phone call from Yongjing?" The secretary once again fell silent. This meant one thing: Yongjing was once again setting up obstacles for them. However, she never expected, not only did this phone call stop Zihao, it also stopped Tongning. "Let's go." Tongning remained calm. Even though she had been stopped outside the door, she did not reveal a single trace of emotion. "Perhaps, I've been out of the industry for too long," Zihao shrugged. Tongning understood his frustration, so she did not say much. She simply asked Zihao, "If I manage to get a chance to talk to them, are you confident you can snatch the job from Yongjing's hands?" "Of course." Zihao nodded. Tongning nodded her head and pointed to the sofa. "In that case, sit here and wait. When the editor comes out and finds out you know he hasn't gone to France, do you think he will be too embarrassed to give you a chance?" Zihao suddenly laughed. Tongning's method was a little crude, but it was a slap in the face. Chapter 132. After not returning to the office for a few days, the first thing Mo Ting did upon returning to Hai Rui was to release a statement to clarify the rumors. The film Deadly would continue filming without changing the actors. The entire crew would continue filming the supporting roles until Hai Rui's actors recovered. As soon as Hai Rui made a move, the fans were immediately comforted. The speed at which Hai Rui dealt with the situation was astonishing. After everything was settled, Mo Ting immediately sent Tongning a message. "Did the interview go well?" "Not well," Tongning replied. She sounded like she was having a headache. Yongjing played dirty again. She even contacted Lan Yu. "It seems she wants to make a comeback and use Lan Yu to control me. Mo Ting looked at the lines of words that Tongning had typed out. The flames in his eyes were extremely cold. Lu Che. President. Lu Che received an internal call and immediately entered the office. Why haven't the rumors about Lan Yu's bullying incident been released yet? Mo Ting asked. I already made arrangements for this before Hai Rui got into trouble. I'm sorry, President. Because of the incident at Hai Rui, I didn't have the time to attend to it. Lu Che apologized guiltily. I will immediately make arrangement. No. Mo Ting stopped him. Let's see what Yongjing wants to do first. If she dares to make another move, I will send her and Lan Yu to hell together. Since Yongjing liked to get involved in Lan Yu's business so much, he would make sure she was also involved. Otherwise, how could he answer to her good intentions? Lu Che seemed to understand Mo Ting had other plans, so he calmed down. I understand, President. Also, go investigate her vision's background. Lu Che thought about the name for a moment before remembering it was a top-tier domestic magazine brand. President, aren't you afraid the madam will find out about this? I'll do it right away. Yongjing was best at using the connections she had accumulated over the years. Especially since most of them were in the grey circle, Yongjing knew how to make use of them. If Tongning went head-on, there was a chance she might be tainted by something dirty. This was a common practice in the modeling industry. Even if it wasn't to deal with Yongjing, he still had to be careful of Lan Shi. This was because many modeling agencies, in order to retain their models, would use underhanded methods. Those agencies with a powerful background would purposely make a mistake and use it as leverage to prevent them from leaving. He wasn't sure if Lan Shi had done this before. Since it was a game of background and he made her lose, then he didn't need to be her husband anymore. However, Yongjing needed to be able to afford it. Inside her vision's office building, Tongning and An Zihao were still sitting outside the chief editor's office. It had already been 3 hours. They blocked the door, preventing the editor-in-chief of her vision from going to the bathroom or coming out to eat. An Zihao suddenly felt his anger dissipate. Thinking about how the woman in the office had to hold back, he couldn't help but let out a laugh. Especially as he looked at the sincere expression on her face, he realized this woman was truly two-faced. We can't keep waiting like this, let's go to the bathroom, Tongning suggested. An Zihao stood up as well. The two of them walked towards the door at the same time. Seeing the two of them leave, the secretary immediately reported to the editor-in-chief. However, when the editor-in-chief came out, the two of them happened to return. Her vision was a 30-something-year-old woman. She didn't have a lot of pride, so now that the two of them had bumped into her, how could she keep her face? At this time, An Zihao immediately gave her a way out. Editor Lin, I know I've put you in a difficult position. Can you give me 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes. The editor glanced at An Zihao and then back at Tongning before replying in surprise. You and Tongning, come in first. In reality, Editor Lin had already noticed Tongning a long time ago because she was able to make TQ, an unpopular magazine, sell like hotcakes. However, she never expected to see her in person. She would be even more beautiful. I know you didn't want to see us because of Yongjing, but we came with sincerity, An Zihao said sincerely. Editor Lin, we have known each other for many years. When I suddenly returned to China and asked you for the November cover, of course you would suspect me. I didn't tell you that Tongning was here for an interview because I wanted to show you our sincerity. But, I've already signed a contract with Yongjing, Editor Lin said awkwardly. Editor Lin replied awkwardly, if you had told me earlier that Tongning was the photographer, instead of using our friendship to ask me for the cover, would I have avoided you? That's right. I know you and Yongjing have gotten closer over the years. But, when have I ever done something I wasn't confident in when I was in the industry? An Zihao laughed. How about this? Tongning will be on the December cover. Editor Lin, I want November. You've already promised me that. Plus, I'm sure you've seen the results. In terms of professionalism and influence, do you think Yongjing's model can compare to Tongning's? If you are going to shoot the November cover, we would rather not. An Zihao used both the carrot and the stick to reduce the chances of the editor rejecting him to 0. Editor Lin was stunned for a moment before replying, how about this, can you give me a day to think about it? After all, I need to give Yongjing and I a satisfactory answer. Of course. But, Editor Lin, you should be aware of Tongning's current appeal. If she were to appear on the cover of another magazine, imagine the sales for November. After all, the Oriental Trend and TQ are real figures. As for Yang Jing's model, what can she possibly produce? Editor Lin's expression was a little ugly, but she still nodded her head seriously. Also, Editor Lin, I hope your agency can keep my relationship with Tongning a secret. After all, Cheng Tian has not officially announced Tongning's contract. When the time comes, Tongning's value will no longer be what it is now. This time, Editor Lin's expression turned even uglier. But, she simply felt it was a pity that Yongjing was in high demand. After all, Yongjing was resourceful and wouldn't affect her magazine's sales. On top of that, if she breached the contract, it wouldn't look good on the surface. So, she chose Yongjing and gave her a phone call. Xiao Jing and Zihao came looking for me. Of course, she was smart enough not to mention Tongning. After all, Cheng Tian was a secret, so she didn't dare to reveal it. He also wants to be on the November cover. Did you agree? Yongjing was still a little nervous. After all, and Zihao's ability couldn't be underestimated. Of course, I'll give it to you. After all, we've already signed a contract, Editor Lin replied. Yongjing smiled in ridicule. She had the attitude of a winner, but was she really going to let you have the upper hand? Would Mo Ting agree? Chapter 133. In the evening, it was rush hour, so all of her Vision's internal staff had left. At this time, an unexpected figure appeared in her Vision's office building. Without even making an appointment, the person was led directly into Editor Lin's office by the secretary. I didn't know Assistant Lu would grace us with his presence. I apologize for my lack of manners. Editor Lin stood up and extended his hand towards Lu Che with a smile. He was overjoyed at Lu Che's arrival. Could it be that Hai Rui was looking for a collaboration? Lu Che was already used to this type of compliment. He squinted his charming eyes and got straight to the point. President Mo would like to know, who is on her Vision's November cover? Editor Lin froze for a moment as her smile froze on her face. However, the person sitting in front of her was Lu Che. His every word and action could represent Mo Ting's intentions. If she was able to collaborate with Hai Rui, her sales would definitely explode. But, she and Yongjing had been friends for many years. Plus, they had already signed a contract. It's Cheng Tian's model, Mu Xia, right? Lu Che asked. Editor Lin looked into Lu Che's eyes in shock. She didn't understand how he knew about this confidential matter. I also know that the recently popular Tongning has also come for an interview. Why didn't you consider her? After hearing Lu Che's question, Editor Lin suddenly didn't understand why he was here. But she thought Lu Che was here because of Hai Rui, so she replied with sincerity, actually, when it comes to capability and popularity, Tongning is much better than Mu Xia. But, as you know, in this industry, connections are important. Although Tongning is very popular, she has no background or connections. On the other hand, Yongjing is different. She can bring a lot of benefits to her Vision. Who said Tongning doesn't have a background? Lu Che's tone turned serious as soon as he heard the words connections. What do you mean, Assistant Lu? Use Tongning for the November cover, Lu Che replied straightforwardly. How can you always think that Tongning doesn't have a background just because she keeps a low profile? If you didn't bully Tongning like this, President Mo might be in a good mood and pay you a penalty. But, since you've already resorted to avoiding him, in that case, President Mo will give you two choices. 1. Continue to use Yongjing as a model and her Vision will close down. 2. Change to Tongning and we can guarantee your November sales will break her Vision's record. Your choice. Editor Lin was stunned as her eyes grew big. She suddenly understood what Lu Che meant. He wasn't here for Hai Rui, he was here for Tongning. Above all, she had no choice. As the king of the industry, it didn't take much effort for him to shut down a magazine. But, she was confused. Why did Mo Ting stand up for Tongning? Editor Lin stared at Lu Che for a long time. After realizing that he wasn't joking, he nodded solemnly. I understand. She never imagined Tongning, the seemingly aloof Tongning, would actually. Hai Rui was there to protect her. I hope you can keep the fact that I came looking for you a secret. You can't let anyone know, including Tongning. Otherwise, you can imagine the consequences. Today, every word I said represents President Mo's meaning. You don't have to doubt it. After speaking, Lu Che stood up and prepared to leave. However, Editor Lin asked Lu Che in a trembling voice. Although it's a little presumptuous, can I know the relationship between Tongning and President Mo? Lu Che turned around. At first, he was a little hesitant, but after a moment of hesitation, he gave Editor Lin the answer, husband and wife. Husband and wife. Husband and wife. Editor Lin's eyes grew wide in shock as she almost lost her footing. She never expected Tongning to be the wife of the CEO of Hai Rui. The wife of the king of the entertainment industry? If Lu Che hadn't told her the truth, she would never have connected Tongning and Mo Ting together. Tongning was, at most, a talented and professional A-grade model. Who would have thought she had such a shocking background? Yet, Yongjing actually tried to steal Tongning's resources? Oh God, she almost harmed her vision and almost offended Hai Rui Entertainment. Seeing Editor Lin's face turn red and pale, Lu Che could tell she had suffered a huge blow. So, before he left, he gave her a warning. If Yongjing hadn't gone overboard, I don't think our president would have bothered to make a move. After all, the madam has always kept a low profile. So, Editor Lin, you need to watch your mouth. Our relationship is a secret. Please tell President Mo that I won't speak recklessly. Editor Lin wasn't stupid. Lu Che smiled and scratched his hair before leaving her vision's office. As he stepped out, he gave Mo Ting a phone call. President, everything's been settled. From now on, as long as it concerns Tongning, as long as I give the order, even if something happens to Hai Rui, you don't need to worry about it. Take care of her first, okay? Yes. Lu Che replied in seriousness. After giving his instructions, Mo Ting put away his phone with a cold gaze. Didn't Yongjing love to steal? Then let her steal as much as she wants. With such a deep lesson in mind, Editor Lin quickly reacted. She immediately found Tongning's resume and threw Mu Xia's file away. Not only that, she also gave An Zihao a phone call and told him she agreed to let Tongning appear on the November cover. She also told them to make the necessary preparations because they would be heading to Moscow for an outdoor shoot. In reality, An Zihao wasn't completely confident because Yongjing had stolen his many years of work notes. On top of that, Yongjing's methods were ruthless. After so many years, he had almost underestimated Yongjing's capabilities. Above all, as he left her vision that afternoon, he clearly saw a look of helplessness in Editor Lin's eyes. It was obvious she was leaning towards Yongjing. So, what made her change her mind? However, An Zihao had no time to think about it. He had to prepare the contract. However, just as he was about to leave the office, Yongjing leaned against the doorway and looked at him mockingly. You're not off work yet? I heard you went to request the cover for Editor Lin today. If you had said you wanted it earlier, I wouldn't have fought with you. An Zihao lifted his head and looked at Yongjing. Not only was she vicious, the more he looked at her, the uglier she was. Oh, I remember now. President Lan wants to hold a grand press conference for you to announce your return. But, even if you do get on the cover of her vision, you don't have a model to support the magazine. Yongjing, it doesn't matter who wins or loses today. The most important thing is to see who can go further in the future. An Zihao finally found the information he was looking for. He looked into Yongjing's eyes and replied coldly. Do you think you have a chance of winning? I've already signed my contract. Really? An Zihao sneered as he brushed past Yongjing. I bet you will receive a contract cancellation call today. Chapter 134. Yongjing simply felt An Zihao was a loser, unwilling to accept defeat. So, she lifted her chin proudly. However, An Zihao simply felt she was ridiculous. like a dancing clown. Neither of them admitted defeat. In the end, Zihao didn't waste any more time with Yongjing. He simply whistled at her, "Sorry, I need to go deliver a contract to her vision." Yongjing felt Zihao's words were ridiculous. According to her relationship with editor Lin, the November cover of her vision would definitely be hers. Over the past few years, she had grown tired of playing these little tricks of Zihao's. However, just as she was about to get overconfident, she received a phone call from her assistant, Yang Jie. "Her vision has requested to cancel our contract." As soon as Yongjing heard this, her mind went blank. After a few seconds, she finally asked angrily, "What's going on?" Editor Lin said she has already found a better model. "But, she shouldn't forget, we have already signed the contract." Yongjing angrily stormed back into her office. How could she go back on her word? "Immediately give her vision a phone call, I want to see Editor Lin." Editor Lin said she is willing to pay double the compensation, but refuses to sign Muxia. She has even transferred the money to the company's account. After hearing her assistant's words, Yongjing angrily kicked the glass beside her. They had been friends for so many years, how could she just cancel the contract like this? Did she think she was easy to bully? Above all, she seemed to have forgotten that just a moment ago, she was bragging about her relationship with editor Lin in front of Zihao and how unbreakable it was. Yet, not even 5 minutes had passed and their relationship had already collapsed. Editor Lin didn't even give her a phone call before directly cancelling the contract and paying double the compensation. What exactly did Zihao do to it? Yongjing directly gave editor Lin a phone call to confirm what had happened. However, the other party treated her the same way they had treated Tongning and refused to pick up her phone. Zihao. The contract in her hands had flown out of her hands just like that. Yongjing gritted her teeth and yelled this name. It was like she wanted to rip the man to shreds. Of course, this wasn't the biggest blow. Late at night, the weather in October had already turned cold. Tongning stood in front of the window in a thin layer of clothing. After receiving a phone call from Zihao, a pair of warm hands wrapped around her from behind and wrapped her up in her pajamas, protecting her from the cold. Ting. I've secured the front cover of her vision. Feeling safe, Tongning couldn't help but lean back as she said in a relaxed tone, "But, why does it feel so surreal?" "Your results are clear for all to see, there's nothing to doubt," Mo Ting said gently as he wrapped his arm around Tongning's neck and tightened his grip around her neck. "But, we are going to Moscow for an outdoor shoot." "I'm afraid of the cold." Tongning hid in Mo Ting's embrace and grabbed onto his arm. "I'll go with you." "Are you still cold with someone warming your bed?" Mo Ting asked as he rubbed his face against Tongning's ear. Tongning let out a gentle laugh and nodded her head. "You are like a stove with you here, of course I won't feel cold. In fact, I will feel warm." Mo Ting placed a kiss on Tongning's ear. He was satisfied with her response as he led her towards the bed. "Go to sleep early. Tomorrow, you will be announcing that you will be a model for Cheng Tian. You need to be energetic. If I sign with Cheng Tian, I will be able to get access to more famous resources. Does that mean I will be one step closer to you?" "Of course, thank you for your hard work, wifey." After receiving confirmation, Tongning was satisfied as she lay down on the soft bed with Mo Ting. However, even Zihao could see the hesitation in editor Lin's eyes. How could someone as observant as Tongning not understand? Deep down in her heart, she had already given up hope of landing the front cover. But, in the end, editor Lin relented and risked breaching the contract. What other reason could there be? It could only be because of Mo Ting's pressure and Hai Rui's protection. Otherwise, editor Lin would not have changed her mind so quickly. Tongning had already guessed it, so she said she didn't think it was real. But, since Mo Ting had decided not to say it, she told herself to be muddle-headed for once. How could she destroy a person's heart that spoils and loves her? So, even though Mo Ting made her feel like she was using her background, she didn't mind it as much as she used to. At least, in front of the jerk Yongjing, she didn't want to be calculative. Tomorrow, She was to officially announce that she had signed with Cheng Tian. Thinking about Yongjing and Luo Hao, who had always tried to stop her from joining Cheng Tian, she couldn't imagine how they would react. Late into the night, the sky was washed over by the heavy rain. Luo Hao had already fallen asleep, but he was quickly woken up by a series of hurried knocks on his door. Luo Hao put on his pajamas and opened the door to find Yongjing leaning against the doorframe drunk and reeking of alcohol. "What are you doing here?" Luo Hao furrowed his brows. "Tomorrow, President Lan will be preparing a grand return ceremony for Nzihao. I refuse to believe that you aren't upset at all." Yongjing rushed into Luo Hao's front door holding a bottle of alcohol. "Did you know? Nzihao stole my resources today. Do you know what this means? He will take revenge on us. What does this have to do with me?" Luo Hao crossed his arms as he looked down at Yongjing. "None of your business. Luo Hao, you've been hypocritical for so many years, haven't you? If it weren't for me, would you have the position of director today? Now that Nzihao is back, don't you think President Lan trusts him even more? How much longer do you think you can hold on to your position?" Although Yongjing was swaying left and right, her words were still logical. "Get this straight, we were the ones that exposed his relationship with Yun Xin together. You took away his position, and I took away his resources. Neither of us can escape responsibility, it's all the same. What are you trying to say? I want to work with you." Yongjing pointed at Luo Hao and said in seriousness, "As long as we work together, Nzihao has no chance at all. President Lan hasn't given him permission to manage an artist yet, but is already planning for his own future. Haven't you sensed the danger? Cooperate with me. Didn't you look for Lan Yu in private? Did you think President Lan wouldn't know what you were doing?" Luo Hao laughed mockingly. "What? Do you want to start your own company? I have confidence. I can take away all the resources in my hands. What about you?" It seemed, this was her plan. Even if she didn't, she still wanted to threaten Lan Shi. After all, Nzihao currently had no bargaining chips. "What do you want President Lan to promise you?" "Fire Nzihao. Otherwise, I will immediately take my artists and jump ship. President Lan may not be threatened by you. Who knows?" Yongjing was determined to give it her all. However, who said Nzihao didn't have any bargaining chips? Tangning and Mo Ting, who was backing her up, were his biggest bargaining chips. Yongjing seemed, she was digging her own grave by taking a shortcut for herself. Chapter 135. Inside the dimly lit room, the two women looked at each other. However, Luo Hao felt Yongjing was too confident. Over the years, if Yongjing had relied on her methods to obtain resources, then Luo Hao's way of doing things was closer to Tangning's. They both liked to stay calm and watch their prey get impatient. Above all, Yongjing had recently been disturbed by Tangning and now she was being pressured by Nzihao. She had already lost her composure. President Lan isn't as easy to deal with as you think. Hypocrite. Coward. Yongjing stared into Luo Hao's eyes and scolded, "You always seek victory through stability, even if it means sacrificing someone. If you don't want to cooperate, then forget it. Tomorrow, I will go look for Lan Shi myself." After speaking, Yongjing stood up to leave. However, Luo Hao grabbed onto her arm. "I didn't say I won't help you. Let's go see President Lan together tomorrow." Luo Hao knew Nzihao's threat was far greater than Yongjing's. Since there was an opportunity in front of him to take him down, he wasn't going to let it go. The next day, noon. Chengtian Entertainment's CEO's office. Lan Shi looked at Yongjing and Luo Hao in surprise. She lifted her chin slightly and asked, "What's the matter? Speak, I will be holding a press conference at 2 p.m. President Lan, I am here to hand in my resignation." Yongjing calmly handed over her resignation letter. "Me too." Luo Hao also pulled out an envelope and placed it on Lan Shi's desk. Lan Shi's expression changed as she asked curiously, "What do you mean by this?" "We are really happy that Zihao has returned. But, after all, we had a disagreement with him in the past. If we continue to stay here, it would be awkward for the three of us. Since he has returned, then we should leave. We hope President Lan can fulfill our wish." Lan Shi's expression was a little complicated. She then revealed a cold smile. "Are you threatening me?" President Lan, yesterday, I signed a contract with her vision. However, Zihao interfered and forced them to cancel the contract. I really don't want to make things difficult for you, but I also don't want to make things difficult for myself. So, I hope you can fulfill my wish. Lan Shi gripped onto her resignation letter. She finally understood their intentions. They wanted to force her to kick Zihao out. As a CEO, how could she allow herself to be threatened by two managers? You can leave first. I will do as you wish. Yongjing and Luo Hao looked at each other. The huge rock hanging in their hearts had finally been lifted. Since Lan Shi did not approve of their resignations, it meant she was weighing the pros and cons. As for Lan Xi's I will do as you wish, in other words, today's inauguration press conference would turn into a resignation press conference. Above all, they had Cheng Tian's resources in their hands, while Zihao had nothing. Yongjing refused to believe that Lan Shi would be willing to throw Cheng Tian into chaos because of Zihao. Lan Shi watched as the two left. It took a lot of effort for her not to throw her resignation letter at their faces. These two arrogant bastards actually dared to threaten her. Do you want to resign so badly? It was worth fulfilling. At 2 p.m., the press conference was held as usual. For Cheng Tian, today was a day worthy of celebration. The former artist's director, Zihao, was returning to Cheng Tian to help them achieve glory. At the same time, all sorts of news regarding Zihao were dug up by the media. In particular, his relationship with Yun Xin was once again hyped up by the media. At this moment, Tongning was already on her way to Cheng Tian Entertainment. She was dressed in a gold lace dress with a diamond necklace around her neck. Her soft and curly hair was draped over her shoulders and her makeup was thick but not flashy. Compared to her usual clean and tidy style, she was completely different. Mo Ting, who was sitting beside her, couldn't help but take a few extra glances at her. What's wrong? Tongning turned and asked Mo Ting as she revealed her delicate neck, You don't recognize me anymore? Normally, Tongning didn't fight for attention and was quiet and pleasant. But at this moment, Tongning was fashionable and dazzling like a queen. This seemed to indicate a change in Tongning's mentality. When she was trying to get revenge, she tried her best to keep a low profile. But from today onwards, she was going to be dazzling and eye-catching. Mo Ting sat up straight and hooked his arm around Tongning's chin. Looking at her full red lips, he couldn't help but place a kiss on them. His lips were stained with lipstick. Tongning was stunned for a moment. She smiled gently and helped him wipe it away. President Mo, what do you want to do? I want to swallow you whole. Mo Ting stared at Tongning as he mumbled in a deep and sexy voice. So, you like the way I put on lipstick? Very beautiful, Mo Ting admitted. From now on, wear lipstick more often. Okay, help me wipe it off. Tongning gently nodded her head. She never expected such a simple action would be able to please this handsome man. Okay, we're close to Cheng Tian, I'll get off here. If anything happens, give me a call. Even if you didn't tell me to, I would have had no choice but to contact you. Who asked you to be the only person close to me? Mo Ting smiled in satisfaction as the corners of his lips curved upwards. His smile seemed to have a captivating charm. Tongning waved at Mo Ting. After Mo Ting left, she contacted Lan Shi. There was still half an hour until the press conference. Under Lan Shi's arrangements, Tongning entered Cheng Tian's secret waiting room and quietly waited for the show to begin. All preparations were in place. At this time, Zihao found out from Lan Shi that Yongjing and Luo Hao had threatened her. Lan Shi was furious. Yongjing and Luo Hao seemed to have lost themselves in the abyss of power and desire. It seemed they couldn't see anything else. Nge, it's great that you've returned. As soon as Zihao entered Cheng Tian, he ran into an old staff member who seemed to be looking forward to his return. Zihao looked at the other party and smiled, not taking it to heart. However, just as they entered the elevator, Yongjing also entered with Mu Xia. They looked at each other for a moment before Yongjing hid her gloomy expression and turned her back to Zihao. Nge, now that you've returned, you won't be leaving again, right? Zihao looked at Yongjing's back, at this scheming woman. His gaze was complicated, but he didn't forget to respond, of course. Hearing this, Yongjing let out a HMPH from her nose. even though no one could hear her. She waited until all the staff had left the elevator before speaking to Zihao. I don't think President Lan is completely satisfied with you. After all, you abandoned Cheng Tian and went overseas. What do you think? Whether she's satisfied or not, it's not up to a small manager like you to decide, Zihao replied coldly. Really? Don't embarrass yourself later. Yang Jing's words had a deeper meaning. She didn't want Zihao to see her face at all. Zihao, of course, understood the meaning behind her words. At the same time, he replied with a deeper meaning, I've already guessed correctly the phone call to cancel my contract. What else do you think I can guess correctly? Yang Jing, remember, Lan Shi didn't rely on you to get Cheng Tian to where it is today. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.